LoveLore Library. Chapter 123. Those who were invited by the Empress Dowager to attend the banquet in the back palace were naturally noble ladies. These noble ladies were used to being elegant and indifferent in front of others. Even if they were fighting in their own residences, they were definitely experts in putting on an act. Everyone had never seen such a brazen shrew quarrel like Su Wan before. At this time, Chen Qingjin was also trembling with anger because of Su Wan. Even if she was normally rational and indifferent, being slandered by Su Wan in front of everyone's eyes, the anger in her heart couldn't help but rise. Su Wan, if you speak irresponsibly again, don't blame me for being impolite. Chen Qingjin suppressed her anger and fiercely glared at Su Wan in front of her. Seeing Chen Qingjin get angry, Su Wan somewhat contemptuously smiled. What, you flew into a rage out of humiliation after being exposed by me in front of everyone? Chen Qingjin, look at you. It's the new year and everyone is dressed jubilantly. Only you are dressed as if your mother died. Sorry, I almost forgot that your mother died a long time ago. Seeing that Su Wan not only didn't know how to restrain herself, but also deliberately talked about her mother who died early, Chen Qingjin could no longer suppress the anger in her heart. She suddenly raised her arm and waved it, wanting to hit Su Wan's face. You don't have the qualifications to talk about my mother. You're not worthy. Paw. Chen Qingjin's hand was struck down in midair by Su Wan, who was already prepared. I'm not worthy. Su Wan narrowed her eyes and coldly looked at Chen Qingjin in front of her. Whether I'm worthy or not, it's Chen Furen who has the final say. And whether I'm worthy or not, it's also Chen Yushu who has the final say. Chen Qingjin, what do you think you are? As a daughter, do you hold a memorial service for your deceased mother every year? As a younger sister, you deliberately broke up your own older brother's marriage. Have you ever thought about your older brother's feelings? A person like you actually keeps on saying that I, Su Wan, am not worthy. Hearing Su Wan's words, Chen Qingjin stared blankly and the surrounding people couldn't help but keep quiet. They had never seen such an overbearing Su Wan. In the past, in order to express goodwill to Chen Yushu, Su Wan would regularly visit Chen Furen's grave every year to pay her respects. At that time, she was regarded as a love-struck fool and was the joke of the entire imperial capital. Now, listening to Su Wan's words, those noble ladies couldn't help but become silent. In the midst of everyone's silence, Chen Qingjin's expression became even more unsightly. Before her rebirth, she had been deceived by Yushu's hypocrisy and had always treated her as her own mother. And after her rebirth, she had always been thinking of taking revenge on all the people who had wronged her in her previous life. Chen Qingjin simply did not have the time or the mind to pay respects to her mother who had died early. Hatred had long blinded Chen Qingjin's eyes, making her unable to see the affection and love of this world. What she saw was only betrayal and deception, only disgust and hatred. At this time, feeling everyone's peculiar gazes looking at her and seeing Su Wan's arrogant face in front of her, Chen Qingjin once again recalled her miserable past life. She thought of the unborn child that had died innocently in her womb. For a moment, sorrow rose in her heart. She couldn't care too much, and with a pale face, she rushed towards Su Wan in front of her. In the previous life, if it wasn't because of Su Wan's obstruction, her brother would definitely seek justice for her and she wouldn't have ended up buried in the fire. Thinking of this, Chen Qingjin's gaze towards Su Wan carried a bone-deep hatred. Seeing Chen Qingjin rushing towards her, Su Wan only smiled. Just as she was about to make a move, the sharp and urgent voice of an attendant suddenly came from the entrance of the main hall. The Empress Dowager has arrived. The Empress Dowager had arrived. When everyone in the main hall heard the announcement, their complexions greatly changed. While tidying up their makeup, they quickly returned to their positions. The Empress Dowager has arrived. Jie, don't be impulsive. Seeing that the Empress Dowager's phoenix carriage was about to enter the door, Chen Qingyao, who had been watching from the side with cold eyes, suddenly stepped forward. While persuading, she pulled on the corner of Chen Qingjin's clothes. "Let go." Chen Qingjin still hadn't become muddle-headed from anger. She knew that Chen Qingyao's sudden action at this time was definitely not good intentions. So she quickly raised her hand and lightly pushed Chen Qingyao. She originally wanted to push her away and let her not hinder her, but when Chen Qingyao retreated, she was seemingly unintentionally tripped by Su Wan beside her. Her whole body's center of gravity was unstable and she swayed and fell to the ground. Her bright and clean forehead just happened to hit the jade floor of the main hall, and in an instant, bright red blood flowed out. This unforeseen event happened so suddenly that when Yusha reacted and rushed over to hold her daughter, the Empress Dowager's phoenix carriage had already entered the main hall. In the main hall, who is so presumptuous? At this time, the main hall was somewhat chaotic. When the attendant saw the scene in the main hall, his eyes couldn't help but turn cold and he loudly berated. Yusha hugged Chen Qingyao, whose forehead was bleeding, and tremblingly kneeled on the ground, not knowing how to answer for a moment. And Chen Qingjin at the side was the first to recover at this time. She courteously bowed to the Empress Dowager. There wasn't any flustered expression on her face. This subject's daughter Chen Qingjin greets the Empress Dowager. May the Empress Dowager be blessed and safe. In the previous life, Chen Qingjin was very familiar with the Empress Dowager's temperament and nature. She knew that the Empress Dowager was not an unreasonable person, and the Empress Dowager also appreciated those people who were not afraid in the face of danger. So right now, Chen Qingjin was calm and composed. She even thought of an excuse. As long as the Empress Dowager opened her mouth and asked what the current situation was, she would definitely say that Su Wan deliberately slandered her. Hearing Chen Qingjin's words, the Empress Dowager, who was dressed in luxurious clothing, only lightly raised her eyes to glance at her. Immediately after, the Empress Dowager's gaze fell on Su Wan's face. Seeing Su Wan also standing in the middle of the main hall with a pale face, the Empress Dowager couldn't help but frown. "Su Jia's girl, what's wrong? Are you scared? Come over to Aijia's side, let Aijia take a look." Chen Qingjin. Everyone. Empress Dowager. When Su Wan heard the Empress Dowager's voice, she immediately had an aggrieved face and pitifully rushed to the Empress Dowager's side. "Empress Dowager, you came at the right time. Just now, Chen Qingjin wanted to hit me and Qingyao Mimi stopped her at the side. In the end, she pushed me to the ground and even injured my forehead. Empress Dowager, you have to uphold justice for this official's daughter. Empress Dowager, you must not listen to Su Wan's one-sided words. The cause of the matter is actually..." Chen Qingjin saw Su Wan inverting right and wrong in front of the Empress Dowager. She couldn't wait to open her mouth to defend herself, but halfway through her words, she was interrupted by the Empress Dowager's cold and dignified voice. "Impudent! Did Aijia allow you to speak?" The Empress Dowager coldly looked at Chen Qingjin, who was dressed in plain silk, and instinctively disliked her. What's more, she actually dared to bully her future daughter-in-law. Thinking of her little son who had a bitter life finally found a likable person with great difficulty and was already preparing to get married, how could she, as the Empress Dowager, allow her future daughter-in-law to be bullied by others in her own territory? "Yusha, tell me what's going on." The Empress Dowager's gaze turned and immediately fell on Yusha and her daughter, who were not far away. Yusha's expression was somewhat complicated, replying to the Empress Dowager, "My daughter Chen Qingjin and eldest young Miss Su had some misunderstanding. She didn't really want to make a move against eldest young Miss Su. I hope that the Empress Dowager will investigate clearly." Yusha's voice trembled, seemingly wanting to defend Chen Qingjin, but in reality, she was confirming the fact that Qin Jin committed violence in the palace. Sure enough, after hearing Yusher's words, the Empress Dowager's expression immediately became gloomy and cold. She lowered her eyes and coldly glanced at Qin Jin, then her gaze softly looked at Su Wan in front of her. "Su Jia's girl, are you hurt? Quickly let I Jia see. This official's daughter is fine, it's just that Qin Yao Mimi, she." Su Wan deliberately dragged out the last word, her gaze falling on Qin Yao, who was not far away. At this time, Qin Yao's thoughts were the most complicated among everyone. All along, Qin Yao felt that she was extremely intelligent. Regardless of whether it was Qin Jin or Su Wan, they were all trash that was toyed with by her in the palm of her hand. But today, she only knew that her seemingly innocent Jijia also had such a calm and collected side. And that idiot eldest young Miss Su, who she had always treated as cannon fodder, was even more amazing with a single brilliant feat. Just now, Qin Yao saw with her own eyes that Su Wan deliberately tripped her, and now, she was crying out for her injustice in front of the Empress Dowager. That it was only at this moment that Qin Yao suddenly discovered that the Su Wan in front of her eyes was really unfamiliar. She wasn't at all like the idiot eldest young miss she knew before. Perhaps, the current her was the most real her. "Come, help Qin Jia's young miss to leave first and summon the imperial physician to treat her." The Empress Dowager gave an order and palace maids immediately stepped forward to help Qin Yao away from Yusher's arms. Waiting until Qin Yao was helped away, the Empress Dowager coldly berated Qin Jin, publicly acting violently in the main hall. "Do you know your crime? This subject's daughter doesn't know." Seeing that the Empress Dowager was intentionally biased towards Su Wan, Qin Jin's heart refused to accept it. She couldn't help but raise her eyes and meet the Empress Dowager's eyes. This subject's daughter still has something to say. Today's matter was clearly Su Wan. "I-oh." Su Wan's scream once again interrupted Qin Jin's words. Qin Jin's expression was unsightly as she looked at Su Wan exaggeratedly holding her forehead. "My head hurts. I don't know if it was because of her anger. Empress Dowager, it's all Xiao Wan's fault. Xiao Wan shouldn't have provoked young Miss Chen and shouldn't have argued with her. Today was originally a great day, but Xiao Wan disappointed Empress Dowager. Empress Dowager, please punish me." As she spoke, Su Wan assumed a posture of kneeling down to admit her mistake. Not waiting for the people at the side to react, the Empress Dowager had already personally bent down to support Su Wan's arms. This action once again stunned the little fellows in the room. What kind of luck did this eldest young Miss Su have? She was actually so favored by the Empress Dowager. "Su Wan, the Empress Dowager's son is my backer. Would I speak irresponsibly?" "Xiao Wan, don't say that. Right and wrong, justice is in the hearts of people. Ai Jia will uphold justice for you." This Xiao Wan, the Empress Dowager, said it smoothly. The people at the side were already speechless. The Empress Dowager was His Majesty's birth mother. The young misses present were all around the same age as the current princes. Who had the ability to let the Empress Dowager directly call them by their names? Even the crown princess didn't have that privilege. Under the dumbstruck gazes of the group of people, only Lu Shi could remain unperturbed with an indifferent face. "That's right, this old mother's daughter will be Jean Wangfei in the future, His Majesty's younger sister-in-law, the Empress Dowager's daughter-in-law. Even the crown prince will have to call her imperial aunt when he sees her, and pay respect to seniority." Thinking of this, Lu Shi's mood was exceptionally comfortable. Alright, in fact, according to seniority and status, marrying Jean Qinhuang really wasn't bad. Chapter 124. The New Year's Eve banquet in the rear palace hall was still going on, but the Qinjia sisters had no fate with tonight's banquet. Chen Qingyao was supported to the side hall to look at her injuries, while Chen Qingjin was punished to meditate in another side hall because she offended the Empress Dowager. Compared to the circumstances of the Qinjia sisters, Su Wan received the Empress Dowager's special favor. Not only did the Empress Dowager let Su Wan sit next to her to eat, she even personally picked food for her with a smile on her face. This kind of special treatment made the noble ladies and furens at the side numb. It said that the bird that sticks out is shot. Today, Su Wan was in the limelight at the banquet. If it was someone else, they would have long been treading on thin ice. Unfortunately, our family's eldest young Miss Su was famous for being heartless. The banquet was only halfway through and Su Wan excused herself in advance with the reason that she was not feeling well. Not only did the Empress Dowager not blame her, she even specially called her personal maid to support Su Wan to the adjacent side hall to have a good rest. The side hall that the Empress Dowager arranged for Su Wan was naturally excellent. As soon as Su Wan entered the door, she felt the warm air inside. At this moment, the stove in the room was burning just right. On the soft couch beside the stove, there was a slender and thin figure. He wore a purple official robe and had a head of black hair that was as smooth as ink that draped over his shoulders. The palace maid behind him didn't seem surprised to see the person in the side hall. She took a step forward and bowed respectfully. This servant greets Ninth Wangye. This palace maid was also an old person by the Empress Dowager's side. Naturally, she habitually called Qin Mu Yen Ninth Wangye. Hearing the palace maid's words, Su Rui impatiently waved his hand. That palace maid immediately tactfully retreated. At this time, only Su Wan and Su Rui were left in the side hall. Happy New Year. The two people coincidentally spoke at the same time and then looked at each other and smiled. Come and sit. Su Rui patted the spot on his side. Su Wan saw his action and unhesitatingly walked to Su Rui's side and sat next to him. You told the Empress Dowager about our matter? Tonight, the Empress Dowager took special care of Su Wan as soon as they met. At that time, Su Wan thought of this, and then she didn't hesitate to take advantage of the situation. Hearing Su Wan's words, Su Rui raised his eyes to look at Su Wan's face and said with a serious face, I know that Chen Qingjin is not your opponent, but I won't allow anyone to bully you, even if they have that thought. As long as I'm here, this world, the next world, every world, no one can bully you. No one can bully you, not even me. Hearing Su Rui's words, Su Wan couldn't help but smile. You're childish, but I like it. While speaking, Su Wan already involuntarily leaned her head on Su Rui's shoulder. After the new year, this mission is almost over. I also don't want Shen Qingjin's life. Like this, you and I each get half of the mission points. What do you say? In the past, Su Wan was very obsessed with mission points, but now she felt that she no longer needed to work so hard to earn points. Hearing Su Wan's words, Su Rui, who was beside her, only lightly nodded his head. I'll listen to you. From the moment he decided on her, to Su Rui, in his entire life, the most important thing was only Su Wan. Everything else was just fleeting clouds. Raising his hand and gently embracing Su Wan's slender waist, the corner of Su Rui's lips involuntarily raised into a gentle smile. On the lively New Year's Eve, in the quiet side hall, the two people quietly snuggled together, peacefully and comfortably silently experiencing their first and last New Year's Eve in the Daqing dynasty. At midnight, dazzling fireworks rose in the sky above the imperial city. A new year had begun. Chen Qingjin, who was punished to reflect in the ice-cold side hall, looked at the brilliant fireworks outside the window through the crack of the window. For a moment, her heart was filled with mixed feelings. She didn't know what she did wrong. She originally thought that after being reborn, she could turn the clouds and rain with one turn of the hand, but she didn't expect that this time, she would actually fall into the hands of Su Wan, who she had always looked down upon. This made Qian very unreconciled. She blankly stared at the fireworks in midair, lost in thought. When she returned to her senses, she suddenly caught a glimpse of a familiar figure from the corner of her eyes. Wasn't that Qian Yao? Once she saw her past life's enemy, Jin's expression immediately became serious. She personally watched Qian Yao's figure disappear into the night. Thinking of the Empress Dowager's punishment towards her, Qian hesitated for a moment. In the end, she still quietly pushed open the door of the side hall. Taking advantage of the gap when no one was paying attention, she quickly followed the direction Qian Yao left in the middle of the night. The palace road leading from the rear palace to the central palace was still brightly lit. As if afraid of being seen by others, Qian Yao, who was in front, kept picking an unmanned path and slowly walked forward. Qian held her breath and quietly followed behind her. Not long after, the two people had already left the rear palace and arrived at the imperial garden at the back of the central palace. In the cold winter, only the winter plum blossoms were still proudly standing upright in the imperial garden. Qian followed Qian Yao all the way to the side of the pond in the center of the imperial garden. Qian Yao, who was in front, suddenly disappeared. Qian rubbed her eyes. In the pitch-black night, in the quiet garden, where was Qian Yao's shadow? This is bad. Qian knew that she had fallen into a trap. Her expression changed greatly and she turned to leave. But the moment she turned, a slender figure floated in front of her like a ghost. Caught off guard, she saw a face that looked exactly the same as her own and Qian suddenly screamed. And the other, Qian, in front of her gave a strange smile and lightly lifted her arms to push forward. Splash. Qian's entire person was pushed into the pond. It was reasonable to say that the pond water should have frozen at this time, but the place she fell into happened to be the ice hole that the palace eunuchs chiseled out to clean the bottom of the pond and feed the winter fishes. The bone-piercing cold surrounded Qian's entire person in an instant. Her consciousness gradually blurred and before she completely lost consciousness, she heard the woman on the shore use her own voice to desperately shout, "Help! Help!" The sharp and panicked cry for help drifted in the quiet imperial garden and fell into the ears of the people who had just entered the entrance of the imperial garden. At this time, everyone had just finished the banquet and were preparing to accompany His Highness the Crown Prince to the imperial garden to enjoy the fireworks and palace lanterns. As a result, once they entered the entrance of the imperial garden, they heard a woman's cry of alarm coming from the garden. This voice may be somewhat unfamiliar to other people, but Qin Yushu and Qin Ting immediately recognized that this was Jin's voice. Qin Ting, who had been suffering from not being able to perform in front of the beautiful woman, had his eyes brighten at this time. Without waiting for Qin Yushu to move, he had already rushed out. Following the direction of the voice, Qin Ting dashed to the side of the pond. Looking at the ice hole in front of him that was emitting cold air, Qin Ting's footsteps paused. As the son of the current empress, Qin Ting was born with extraordinary dignity. In these 10 years, his life could be said to be smooth sailing and he had never suffered the slightest bit of hardship. The ice-cold pond water in front of him could be felt with the naked eye. Once he jumped in, the cold air would definitely enter his body. Just as Qin Ting hesitated, he saw another figure jump in without hesitation. That was Your Second Highness. Everyone at the side looked at Qin Yu, who jumped into the water in astonishment. Even Qin Yushu, who had rushed over and was preparing to enter the water, stared blankly in place. All along, Qin Yushu knew that the fifth prince had a favorable impression of his younger sister. However, he didn't expect that at such a dangerous juncture, the fifth prince would hesitate and the always silent second prince would enter the water to save her without the slightest hesitation. Not long after, the surface of the water swayed and Qin Yu dragged the already unconscious Qin ashore. Qin Jin. Chen Yushu anxiously wanted to move forward, but Qin Yu stiffened his body and held Qin Jin in his arms. General Qin, don't touch her. Quickly call the imperial physician. Everyone's trip to the imperial garden was unexpectedly interrupted by Qin Jin. The crown prince immediately had people summon the imperial physician over, and a group of people followed Qin Yu's figure until Qin Jin was sent to a palace in the middle palace. Qin Yu. It didn't take long for the news of Qin Jin falling into the water to spread to the inner palace. Hearing this news, Yushu's complexion greatly changed, and the Empress Dowager, who was sitting on the high seat, had a gloomy expression. Why did Qin Jin, who was supposed to reflect in the side hall, secretly go to the imperial garden? Moreover, it just so happened that when His Highness the Crown Prince brought all the gongzi to the imperial garden, she just happened to fall into the water. How could there be such a coincidental thing in this world? Chapter 125. After New Year's Eve, Qin Jin was grounded by Marquis Qinchuan, Qin Che, in the rear courtyard of the Marquis Fu to reflect on his mistakes. But this did not prevent the nobles in the capital from continuing to talk behind Qin Jin's back. Everyone was idle all day, and now that there was such good material delivered to their doorstep, it was enough for those idle gongzi and noble ladies to make up 9 times 981 different versions of Qin Jin's memoirs. Regarding Qin Jin's matter, Su Wan no longer cared about it. Right now, Marquis Jingning Fu was preparing for Su Wan and Su Rui's marriage. The entire Marquis Fu was a bustling scene. After the Lantern Festival, the news that Marquis Jingning Fu wanted to unite by marriage with Jin Qinwang Fu finally slowly spread in the capital. Once this news came out, it immediately replaced Qin Jin's scandal and became the hottest topic in the capital this year. The officials and common people of the imperial capital all knew that the always weak Jin Qinwang, Qin Muyen, had never been close to women, but why did he take a fancy to Marquis Jingning Fu's young Miss Su? It was rumored in the streets that Ninth Wang Ye and young Miss Su were fated because of a white tiger king. The two of them felt like old friends at first sight and regretted not meeting earlier. Young Miss Su's natural, Mei, lively, Mei Fei personality also made Ninth Wang Ye, who had been lonely for more than 20 years, feel moved. Moreover, everyone knew that these past few years, young Miss Su had been bitterly and infatuated with General Shin. It was a pity that the goddess had a heart, but Xiang Wangye had no dreams. Although the two of them also had an engagement, regarding Su Wan's one-sided efforts, Shin Yushu had never directly given her any response. In this way, compared to the Ninth Wangye who treated people with kindness and gentleness, it was reasonable for Su Wan to fall in love with someone else. When Shin Yushu found out that Su Wan was going to marry Qin Muyen, he was leading the Black Tiger Army soldiers in the training grounds of the capital. The one who told Shin Yushu the news was the general in the army. Su Wan was getting married. When Shin Yushu heard this news, he was stunned for a moment. His hands unconsciously loosened and the weapon in his hand immediately fell to the ground, sending up countless dust. General. The general at the side looked at his general hesitantly, regretting that he had spoken too quickly. I'm fine. Shin Yushu came back to his senses and straightened his face. You guys go ahead and train first. We'll go out for a bit. There were some matters that Shin Yushu should have gone to find Su Wan and explained it clearly to her face. It's just that he was too busy training his troops these days and... At the bottom of his heart, he was subconsciously unwilling to go and confront Su Wan. Regarding that matter, regardless of whether what Su Wan said was true or false, it would still make Shin Yushu feel uncomfortable. After many days, he once again arrived at the entrance of Marquis Jingning Fu. Shin Yushu looked at the busy servants hanging red silk at the entrance and his gaze slightly congealed. The bright red satin was glaring and dazzling. In the past, as long as Shin Yushu came to Marquis Jingning Fu, he would be unimpeded. But today, he was stopped at the door waiting for the steward's announcement. When Shin Yushu finally saw Su Wan, it was already a quarter of an hour later. The weather in the first month was still chilly. Su Wan was wrapped in a snow-white fur cloak, and in her hand was the green plum blossom that she had just picked from the backyard. "Young Master Shin, what brings you here?" Walking into the hall, Su Wan's body still carried the cold air that had yet to disperse. She stamped her feet and raised her hand to hand over the green plum blossom in her hand to the servant girl in the hall. Seeing Su Wan calmly sit on a wooden chair at the side, Shin Yushu calmly looked at her. "I heard that you are getting married and specially came to congratulate you." "Thank you." Su Wan faintly smiled at Shin Yushu. "Are you still going to drink the Hong Pao today? I'll call someone to brew it for you." "No, no need." Shin Yushu waved his hand at Su Wan, his gaze gradually becoming deep. "Actually, I still have a matter that I want to make clear to you this time." Speaking to here, Shin Yushu's expression was slightly hesitant. He suddenly didn't know what to say. If those rumors were true, how should he face his own younger sister in the future? And if those rumors were all fabricated by Su Wan, then what kind of mood should he use to face Su Wan? Seeing Shin Yushu sitting there as if in a dilemma, Su Wan couldn't help but take the initiative to speak. "It's because of Chin Jin's matter, right?" Hearing Su Wan take the initiative to speak, Shin Yushu stared blankly and subconsciously raised his eyes. A pair of pitch-black pupils tightly stared at Su Wan's face. Under Shin Yushu's attentive gaze, Su Wan still had an indifferent expression. "Regardless of whether you believe it or not, every word that I said in the inner palace that day is true. If you don't believe it, you can investigate it yourself. Of course, with our current relationship, no, it should be said that I have always been unimportant in your heart. So, you can choose not to believe me. I also won't blame you. After all, it's all in the past. Some things have already passed and there's not much meaning in looking into it." Hearing Su Wan say this, Shin Yushu didn't say anything. He just quietly looked at Su Wan's eyes, as if wanting to see through her with a glance. "You broke off the engagement with me at that time. Was it because of Qin Jin? Or was it because of Jin Qin Wang?" No proud man was willing to admit that he was the one who was abandoned. Shin Yushu was no exception. "Is there still any meaning in saying this now?" Su Wan lowered her eyes and somewhat irritably tightened the cloak on her body. She was no longer willing to look at Shin Yushu face to face. She didn't admit it, nor did she deny it. This made Shin Yushu's mood very vexed. However, what else was there to be vexed about? He and she had long become strangers who had no relationship with each other. Walking out of Marquis Jingning Fu, Shin Yushu glanced back at the gilded plaque of the Marquis Fu under the sunlight. In this lifetime, he would probably never take half a step into this place again. Smiling somewhat self-deprecatingly, Shin Yushu was about to turn around and leave when he suddenly caught a glimpse of a familiar figure from the corner of his eyes. That was eldest young master. When Yu stood in the small alley outside the walls of Marquis Jingning Fu, quietly looking at Shin Yushu who was not far away. This word eldest young master made Shin Yushu's gaze congeal. He quickly walked to the entrance of the alley and coldly looked at the woman in front of him. Yu Ru? Right now, the woman in front of him was much thinner and more haggard than the Yu Ru in Shin Yushu's memory. Eldest young master, this servant is now called Wen Yu, eldest young Miss Su's personal maid. Wen Yu lightly saluted Shin Yushu and informed him of her current identity. You said that you're Su Wan's. What's going on? Shin Yushu's thoughts were already disrupted by Wen Yu's words. Qing Jin said that you were beaten to death by Chen Mian. How could you? This servant indeed almost lost her life. It was young Miss Su who saved this servant and gave this servant a new life. Speaking up to here, Wen Yu firmly bit her lips. She took a deep breath and suddenly knelt in front of Shin Yushu as if she had made up her mind. Eldest young master, this servant deserves to die 10,000 times for her crimes. This servant is guilty. This servant has let down young Miss Su, let down eldest young master. You. Shin Yushu's heart shook. Although he had already thought of a certain possibility, he didn't dare to be sure. Could it be that what Su Wan said was true? It really was Qing Jin, it was Qing Jin, she. Yes. When Yu clenched her teeth and finally admitted this matter, it was young Miss Qing Jin who instigated this servant to frame young Miss Su. That day's matter was all single-handedly arranged by young Miss Qing Jin, and this servant assisted from the side. This matter had already been suppressed in Wen Yu's heart for far too long and had already become a sore point that could not be removed. And now, she finally had the courage to say everything. When Wen Yu told Shin Yushu the plan that day without missing a word, Shin Yushu's complexion was already extremely unsightly. He didn't think that the little sister that he had always doted on would actually be malicious to this degree. Now that he thought about it, Qing Jin seemed to have never liked Su Wan, but this could not become a reason for her to harm others. It must be known that a woman's reputation and integrity in the Daqing dynasty was something more important than her life. Not only did Qing Jin want to destroy Su Wan's reputation, she also wanted to push her to Chen Mian. What kind of trash was Chen Mian? Once he thought of how Su Wan was almost defiled by Chen Mian that day, Shin Yushu couldn't help but tightly clench his fists. Seeing Shin Yushu's tightly clenched fists and the blood red in his eyes, Wen Yu once again hardened her heart. She slowly raised her head and looked at Shin Yushu with a serious face. Eldest young master, do you know why young Miss Su broke the engagement? Why was she willing to marry Jin Qin Wang? What else do you know? Tell me. Wen Yu's words made Shin Yushu recover from his anger. He knew that what Wen Yu was going to say next was perhaps what she truly wanted to tell him, and this answer, perhaps, was not what he wanted to know. Marquis Jingning Fu, rear courtyard. After sending off Shin Yushu, Su Wan brought Wen Yu back to her boudoir. Today, the Imperial Clothing Bureau had already brought the wedding dress over. This was the Wangfei's wedding dress that the Empress Dowager had decreed. The bright red wedding dress was made of the best and most expensive red snow satin. The edges were lined with golden threads and embroidered with auspicious cloud patterns. On the chest area was a pair of lively mandarin ducks intertwined with each other, and the hem of the skirt was inlaid with smooth and round pearls from the Eastern Sea. This wedding dress was priceless and was comparable to the Empress Phoenix gown. Young miss, this wedding dress is too beautiful. The Empress Dowager and Wang Ye are really too good to you. When Yu saw the priceless wedding dress that was neatly arranged on the bed and her pair of eyes were emitting a golden light, Su Wan slowly walked to the bedside and raised her hand to lightly touch this somewhat familiar wedding dress. This wedding dress was indeed custom-made according to the Empress specifications. Not the Empress of the Daqing dynasty, but the Empress of the Daxia dynasty. Su Wan somewhat absent-mindedly remembered that in that world, she and Su Rui met for the first time and separated for the first time. At that time, she was wearing this kind of wedding dress and in the end, disappeared from Su Rui's embrace. It turns out, he still remembered. It turns out, she also never forgot. The 8th day of the 2nd month, an auspicious day, suitable for marriage. In the center of the imperial capital, from Marquis Jingning Fu to Jin Qinwang Fu, the not too long street was occupied by a very long wedding procession. The sweet-sounding joyous music spread throughout the imperial capital along with the cool breeze. Both sides of the long street were already surrounded by the common people of the imperial capital who came to watch the excitement. The guards of Jin Qinwang Fu were all wearing the same wedding dress, and Su Rui, who rarely went out, was also wearing a crimson python robe today, with a golden crown on his head. The people of the imperial capital only knew that Jin Qinhuang was wise and far-sighted. Very few people had seen the true appearance of this Qinhuang who lived in the legends. Now that Su Rui was riding a Fergana horse and wearing a solemn formal attire, appearing in front of everyone with a calm expression, it immediately caused a cry of surprise. It turns out that our family's Wang Ye was actually so peerless in his generation. The young girls of the imperial capital expressed that their hearts were about to break if they knew that Wang Ye was this handsome. This servant would also be willing to give birth to a monkey for you. In fact, according to Daqing's ancestral system, when a Qinhuang got married, the groom didn't need to personally welcome him. He only needed to send a wedding procession to carry the bride's carriage to the Wangfu's main entrance before the auspicious time. But this time, Su Rui still insisted on personally going to Marquis Jingning-fu to welcome him. Not everyone had this kind of opportunity to complete different weddings with their beloved in different worlds. Chapter 126. Marquis Jingning-fu's backyard, Su Wan's boudoir. The red satin decorated the entire room with a joyous atmosphere. Su Wan wore a bright red wedding dress and quietly sat upright in front of the bronze mirror. Lucia, who was behind her, also wore the court attire of a noblewoman. At this time, she was holding a comb and combing Su Wan's hair with red eyes. The bronze mirror at the side reflected Su Wan's face. Today, Lucia personally drew exquisite makeup for her and stuck a red plum blossom forehead ornament on her forehead. Looking at this young and exquisite face in the mirror, Su Wan was slightly absent-minded. She had long been accustomed to the completely different appearances in each mission world. Appearance was never the most important thing to Su Wan, but today, seeing Lucia working so hard for her, glancing at the tears at the corner of her eyes, as well as Wen Yu's red eyes from crying, Su Wan's mood also became somewhat nervous. She never liked to be involved with the people in the mission world, but ever since she met Su Rui, her life changed a lot. It was the first time she married Su Rui in the mission world. At that time, he was still Fang family's eldest young master. The two people's wedding was like a show. After the wedding, the two people returned to their respective rooms and no longer intersected. And because of Su Xiaosu's existence, that wedding in the online game was so noisy that she didn't have any impression of it. This time, in this world, it was Su Wan's first time taking a wedding seriously. This was her and Su Rui's big wedding. As long as she thought of Su Rui in her heart, Su Wan would feel that her heart, which had been empty for a long time, was filled to the brim by him. The return of love is the return of the heart. The melodious joyous music was getting closer and closer. When the deafening sound of firecrackers sounded at the entrance of Marquis Jingning-fu, Lucia finally held back the tears in her eyes and with trembling hands, she placed the 9 phoenix crown that symbolized the Qin Wang Fei on Su Wan's head. "Wan'er, you're especially beautiful today." Lucia's voice was somewhat hoarse and choked with sobs. Su Wan couldn't help but stand up and raise her hands to hold Lucia's hands. "Mother, daughter will be happy in this life, very happy." Although the original Su Wan was only a short-lived cannon fodder, she had a pair of parents who loved her dearly. Su Wan was actually a bit envious because she had never experienced the warmth of her parents and loved ones. So when she saw Lucia forcefully endure her heartache and smile at her, Su Wan couldn't help but lean into Lucia's embrace and gently hug her. "Mother, you and father have to live well in the future. Even if I'm not here, you guys have to live well." "Child, what do you mean by no longer here?" "Child's words carry no harm." Lucia pretended to be angry and patted Su Wan's back. "Although you've married out, you'll always be mother's sweetheart in this life. If Wang Ye bullies you, you tell mother and mother will absolutely not spare him. Mother, don't worry. His Highness treats me well. He won't let me down." Su Wan smiled brilliantly at Lucia. Seeing her daughter's sincere smile, Lucia wiped away the tears at the corner of her eyes and earnestly took the gold-embroidered cloud robe from Wen Yu's hands and carefully draped it over Su Wan's shoulders. "Mrs. Su, Princess, it's the auspicious time." At this time, the clear and respectful voice of Jin Wangfu's maidservant rang outside the door. "All right, it's the auspicious time." Taking a deep breath, Lucia once again firmly grasped Su Wan's hand. "It's time to set off." Su Wan nodded, and under the support of Wen Yu, she arrived at the door and forcefully pushed open the door to the room. Outside the door, a familiar figure immediately entered Su Wan's eyes, a slender and perfect figure, an unparalleled handsome appearance. Su Rui raised his eyebrows and the corners of his mouth slightly curled up as he stood outside Su Wan's door. That crimson python robe made him look noble and elegant at this moment. Wang Ye. Lucia, who was following behind Su Wan, was also stunned. According to Daqing's customs, the bride only needed to be carried out of the courtyard by the matchmaker. Of course, because Su Wan's identity was a princess, the person carrying her should have been Jin Wangfu's nanny in charge. But how did it suddenly become Wang Ye himself? "Su Wan, Ben Wang has come to take you home." Under the dumbstruck gazes of the bystanders, Su Rui walked step by step to Su Wan. Then, with a confident and unrestrained turn, he very naturally bent down in front of Su Wan. In this world, there was only this kind of person who was worthy of him, Su Rui, being willing to bow his head. Su Wan pursed her lips and lifted her skirt to stand behind Su Rui. Looking at his broad and familiar back, the corner of Su Wan's lips involuntarily curved. Just like before, her hands tightly embraced his neck and then her whole body jumped onto his back, sticking her face on Su Rui's back. This was the action that made Su Wan feel the most at ease. Seeing Su Rui carrying Su Wan and leaving step by step, Lucia stood at the door of her daughter's boudoir in a daze for a long time. In the end, she still smiled comfortably. Her precious daughter, she had always been unreliable. Fortunately, she was finally reliable for once in her marriage. In short, this son-in-law, Lucia was finally satisfied this time. When Su Rui carried Su Wan out of Marquis Jingningfu's front door, it immediately caused a commotion in the crowd. Forgive Daqing's people for being simple and honest. When had the little friends in the capital seen such an open and above-board display of affection? This was simply blinding people's eyes, all right. Wang Ye, Wang Fei. Shui Yu, who had been guarding the sedan chair the whole time, saw the two people come out and immediately attentively and respectfully took out a stepping stool and placed it under the sedan chair. As a result, the conscientious child Shui Yu received Wang Ye Darren's cold eyes, adding an endless cold effect. Shui Yu. Wang Ye, I was wrong, I was really wrong, please let me go. Shui Yu felt that his IQ had dropped recently. Wang Ye had personally carried Wang Fei out, why did he still need to use a sedan chair? Wasn't this clearly separating the two people? Why didn't he have a good eye? Look at Shui Feng, how fast has his business ability improved? He watched as Shui Feng quietly led Su Rui's BMW over and Su Rui finally smiled in satisfaction. He nimbly turned around and carried Su Wan, who was on his back, in his arms. In the next moment, it was another handsome jump in the air. Su Rui carried Su Wan and stepped on Shui Feng's leg, directly sitting on the horse. Shui Yu, that he felt that he was about to lose his job, what to do? Oh! Ah! Screams came from the surrounding crowd. It was very clear that everyone didn't expect Jin Qinhuang to have this kind of skill. Right now, everyone's thoughts were, picking up a bride and you're already this desperate. Wang Ye, you're also quite desperate to get married. Wang Ye must really love eldest young Miss Su. Eldest young Miss Su is so blessed. Like this, it looks like the two of them are a perfect match. don't want that. Just when everyone was still immersed in this very romantic scene, a discordant voice suddenly rang out not far away. Su-won. Shin Yu-shu was wearing the Black Tiger Army's uniform and riding a date red steed. He suddenly appeared at the corner of the street of Marquis Jingning-fu with a somber aura. Su-won, I have something to say to you. On the steed, Shin Yu-shu's expression was especially serious and solemn. Ever since that day when you told Shin Yu-shu about Su-won's encounter, Shin Yu-shu's mood had been very restless. He didn't know how he should face Su-won and also didn't know what he should do for her. Just like this, the days passed day by day, and in the blink of an eye, it was the day of her and Qin Muyan's marriage. 10 li of red, the sound of gongs and drums filled the sky. The entire imperial capital seemed to have sunk into a joyous celebration. Only Shin Yu-shu was incomparably clear-headed and regretful. Yes, only at the last moment did he become clear-headed. He clearly knew what he wanted. So, he came. Shin Yu-shu's appearance made the entire Jin Qinhuangfu's escort team act as if they were facing a great enemy. Your mother, one look and you can tell that they're here to snatch the bride. You dare to come single-handedly. Are you looking down on our Jin Qinhuangfu's people? While the Wangfu's guards were glaring at him, Su Rui, who was sitting upright on the horse, only carelessly tidied up Su-won's hair that was messed up by the wind. He then lazily raised his eyes and looked at Shin Yu-shu, who was not far away, with a face of indifference. Shin Darren, Ben Wang's Wangfei has nothing to say to you. Every time I get married, I always encounter a brainless ex-husband who comes to snatch the bride. I really want to kill them. What should I do? On this joyous day, Su Rui didn't want to see blood, so he patiently replied to Shin Yu-shu. But when Shin Yu-shu heard Su Rui's words, he didn't leave. Instead, he stared at Su-won with a profound gaze. Su-won, I know about your matters. I regret it now. I don't want to lose you. I am willing to marry you. Although after knowing what happened to Su-won, Shin Yu-shu also hesitated and struggled, but in the end, he still felt that he couldn't miss a woman who loved him so deeply. Su-won had once sacrificed a lot for him. The reason why she had that kind of experience was also because of him. As a man, Shin Yu-shu felt that he had the responsibility to be responsible for her life. Hearing Shin Yu-shu's affectionate confession, Su-won finally raised her eyes and faintly looked at him. In fact, on the day that when you and Shin Yu-shu met, Su-won already knew about it. She had been thinking whether or not Shin Yu-shu would come to look for her and when he would appear. She didn't expect that he would choose to appear at such an unsuitable time. If on that day, Shin Yu-shu returned to Su-fu to confess to Su-won, perhaps, Su-won would still feel that Shin Yu-shu was a responsible and good man, but now. Shin Darren, I also regret it. Su-won lightly smiled at Shin Yu-shu. I regret that I once liked someone like you, coward. Su-won. Shin Yu-shu received a blow to his heart from Su-won. His expression was unsightly and for a moment, he didn't know how to react. Let's go, don't delay the auspicious time. Not caring about Shin Yu-shu's expression, Su-won turned her head and softly whispered in Su Rui's ear. N. Su Rui nodded and directly ignored Shin Yu-shu's figure. Carrying Su-won, he rode the horse and leisurely headed towards Jin Wangfu. Everyone in the Wangfu once again beat the gongs and drums. The entire journey was very lively and joyous. From Marquis Jingning-fu to Jin Wangfu, in the short journey, the two people received countless gazes and also heard many blessings from the common people. Su Rui had been tightly hugging Su-won in his embrace, his pair of big hands also tightly holding her slender little hands. This pair of hands, once he held them, he would never let them go again, unless he died. The imperial family's wedding was always particularly tedious and a waste of time. By the time Su-won finished her ceremony and returned to the bridal chamber, her entire person had already been tossed around until she didn't have any strength. Looking at the comfortable and soft dragon and phoenix couch in the bridal chamber, Soo-won simply took off the heavy phoenix crown on her head and threw herself onto the bed. So comfortable, so comfortable that she didn't want it. Chapter 127. In the bridal chamber, the fiery red dragon and phoenix candles were burning brightly. Soo-rui slowly walked to the bedside and lifted the golden curtain embroidered with peonies and lilies. Soo-won was lying on the dragon and phoenix couch, sleeping peacefully. Because she took off the phoenix crown, her long hair was slightly disheveled, lazily and sexily pasted on the red cotton pillow. The collar of the red phoenix robe on her body was slightly open, revealing the cyan collar of the undergarments inside, as well as a large area of snow-white smooth skin. Soo-rui sat on the bedside and quietly looked at Soo-won. He looked at her delicate brows and looked at her defenseless expression when she was asleep. As he watched, Soo-rui couldn't help but bend down and lightly kiss Soo-won's lips like a dragonfly skimming the surface of the water. He also didn't know what Soo-won applied on her lips today. A slightly sweet breath drilled into Soo-rui's nose. He took a deep breath and gently stuck out the tip of his tongue to lick Soo-won's lips. The numbness and strange feeling between her lips made Soo-won wake up from her deep sleep. Right now, her consciousness was still somewhat muddled. Feeling the familiar and peaceful aura lingering around her, Soo-won's eyelashes trembled and she slowly opened her eyes. Meeting Soo-rui's dark and gloomy gaze, Soo-won blinked. "You're back." Soo-rui nodded at Soo-won and his gaze fell on her body. "Are you tired? What do you think?" Seeing that he already knew the answer, Soo-won couldn't help but raise her eyebrows. She wore such a heavy phoenix crown and robe and accompanied him to complete the conferring ceremony. It took a few hours, how could she not be tired? Oh. Seeing Soo-won's somewhat resentful expression, Soo-rui's gaze flashed. "Then don't drink the nuptial wine. If you're tired, go to sleep." Soo-won also didn't care much about the rules of this world. Hearing Soo-rui's words, she nodded and lazily turned over. But just as she turned over, her entire body was forcefully pulled back by Soo-rui. "At least undress before going to sleep, right? Seeing that you're this tired, I'll help you bathe and undress." Soo-won didn't even have time to refuse when she was lifted up from the bed and carried all the way to the bathroom of the bridal room. The bathroom was filled with a faint mist. In order to prepare the bath for the bridal chamber, the servants in the mansion had already smoked the orchids. With the addition of the Western region spices given by the emperor, the whole pool was filled with a fragrant mist. Soo-rui placed Soo-won on the white jade by the side of the bathtub. A pair of big hands nimbly tore open the bright red wedding dress on her. The bright red color landed on the snow-white jade ground, exceptionally eye-catching. Right now, Soo-won was only wearing a thin cyan inner garment. Her exquisite curves were faintly discernible under the cover of the thin garment. Soo-rui's gaze involuntarily darkened and his breathing quickened. Feeling his slightly cold fingers touch the skin on her neckline, that electric shock made Soo-won couldn't help but tremble. Soo-rui, I'll do it myself." Soo-won somewhat impatiently wanted to brush away Soo-rui's big hands, but Soo-rui first raised his hands and imprisoned Soo-won's entire body in front of his chest. Then he carried her and directly jumped into the bath. The fragrance lingered and the water was misty. The warm water flow carried an intoxicating fragrance and attacked Soo-won's nerves in an instant. She was absent-minded for a moment and the next moment, Soo-rui had already leaned against her ear and softly whispered, "Soo-won, I love you. I love you." These 3 simple words, but they were the most pleasant to hear in this world. Soo-won raised her eyes and looked at the familiar and charming outline of the man in front of her in the mist. She couldn't help but raise her hand and her fingers gently slid over Su Rui's eyebrows. Su Rui, I love you too. What answered her was Su Rui's overwhelming kisses. Cloudy hair, golden hair ornaments, hibiscus tent warm the spring night. The spring night is bitter and short, the sun rises high. From then on, the emperor does not attend morning court. When Su Wan woke up the next day, it was already late in the morning. The side of the bed was empty. Su Rui had obviously gotten up a long time ago. Thinking that she should get up early this morning and go to the palace to pay respects to the Empress Dowager, Su Wan immediately struggled to get up. However, she was tossed around by Su Rui too ruthlessly last night. She only moved a little and her whole body began to hurt endlessly. Especially a certain place under her body, it was simply unbearable. Su Rui. Su Wan couldn't help but roar, her hoarse voice was full of anger. Beloved concubine, you're awake. Hearing the movements in the inner room, Su Rui, who had been busy in the bathroom, immediately put on a robe and walked over. He had just finished bathing and his body still carried the smell of cloud grass. This familiar fragrance made Su Wan recall the scenes in the bathroom last night. She immediately lowered her eyes and her face was a little hot. Why didn't you wake me up? Aren't you going to the palace this morning? I already sent someone to the palace to pass a message to the Empress Dowager. Su Rui walked to the bedside step by step, lowered his eyes and smiled at Su Wan. I told them to tell the Empress Dowager that Ninth Wangye was too tired last night and can't get up today. Su Wan, you're very tired, but you're more lively than anyone right now, okay? But thinking about it, the Empress Dowager and His Majesty will definitely believe this excuse. Who told our family's Wangye to be incapable in other people's eyes? Thinking of this, Su Wan's irritable mood finally eased a little. She raised her hand to support her body and wanted to get up, but the pain in her body made her involuntarily suck in a breath of cold air. Her face couldn't help but become a bit pale. Seeing Su Wan's sorry figure, Su Rui's gaze flashed. He immediately bent down and held her in his arms. Don't move, I'll help you bathe and change clothes. Don't. Su Wan somewhat panicked and blurted out. As soon as the words left her mouth, she awkwardly turned her face to the side. Su Rui smiled lowly and lowered his head to kiss her forehead. Last night, I couldn't control myself for a moment. Don't worry, it won't happen again. Don't be angry. Hearing Su Rui's gentle words, Su Wan's complexion eased a little. Unfortunately, Su Wan's knowledge in a certain aspect was still lacking. She didn't understand a principle. A man's words on the bed cannot be trusted, and the words off the bed sometimes cannot be trusted. At noon, Su Wan was finally able to reluctantly walk back and forth in the bridal room with Wen Yu's support. And at this time, Shui Yu brought the servants of the Wangfu to move all the items that had just been bestowed from the palace to the hall outside for Su Wan to personally look over. The Empress Dowager and His Majesty's gifts were dazzling and dazzling. Other than some gold, silver, and jewels for their daughter's household, the rest were all tonics, great tonics. Tonics for the kidney and yang. Su Wan's face darkened as she looked at the table of tonics. Wang Fei, look at these. Do you want to instruct the kitchen to prepare them? Feeling that Su Wan's pressure was a bit low, Shui Yu's voice also lowered. Throw them away. Throw them all away. Right now, Su Wan's fire would rise as soon as she saw tonics. To hell with tonics for the kidney and yang. If your Wangye continued to take more, he would overturn the heavens, okay? She didn't want to be made to death in bed alive. Seeing Su Wan flip out, Shui Yu immediately nodded in a hurry. He instructed everyone to leave all the jewels and accessories behind, and those tonics bestowed by the emperor were all carried out by Shui Yu in his arms. Chapter 128. Ever since Su Wan and Su Rui's big wedding, news about the two of them had been the focus and topic of discussion in the capital. Because Jin Qinhuang's way of welcoming the bride on the day of the wedding was too handsome, it led to the capital's aristocrats abandoning the bridal sedan and carriage for their wedding and all changed to the bride and groom riding together. What? You said that you want to use the 8-person sedan to carry me in. You definitely don't love me anymore, you absolutely don't love me anymore. If you really love me, then you should ride together with me and be intimately intimate. The newly married Su couple, who inadvertently led the capital's new wedding trend, didn't know the situation outside. After Su Wan returned home on the third day of their wedding, the two people rarely appeared. Most of the time, the two people listened to music in the Wangfu and chatted. When they were bored, they would go to the rare beast garden and trample on Big White, who had already grown fat. As for a certain imperial family's orphan who was originally staying in Jin Wangfu and wholeheartedly wanted to assassinate His Majesty, he had long been thrown beyond the highest heavens by Su Rui. In the blink of an eye, it was the 3rd month of spring. The weather began to gradually warm up. March was the season of peach blossoms and willows. Jin Wangfu's backyard also planted a few peach trees. Seeing that this year's peach blossoms were in full bloom, Su Wan couldn't help but exclaim a few words of praise. And Su Wan's words somehow reached Su Rui's ears. Not long after, our family's Wang Ye ordered people to transplant the peach blossom forest on the outskirts of the capital to the Wangfu's other courtyard. It was a huge house with 3 courtyards, and the courtyard was filled with peach trees that were in full bloom. Since then, there was another anecdote about Jin Wangye's lover in the capital. And the noble young masters and ladies who had been hiding in their respective mansions for the entire winter were ready to make a move when spring arrived. When they learned that Jin Wangfu's other courtyard was filled with peach blossom trees, like a peach blossom fairyland, some people's hearts began to run wild, wanting to encounter a romantic love like Jin Wangye and his wife in such a beautiful scenery. As a result, under the urging of a group of imperial relatives, Hunan Wang's heir apparent, Qin Xiang, personally went to Jin Wangfu to pay his respects. He tactfully asked Su Rui and Su Wan's intentions and learned that the children of the influential families wanted to hold a spring party in the Wangfu's other courtyard. Su Rui instinctively disliked it. Those peach blossoms were prepared by him for Su Wan. How could he casually let other people admire them? Fortunately, Su Wan quite liked lively scenes. In the end, she made the decision on this matter. As a result, the news of Jin Wangfei holding a spring party in Peach Blossom Courtyard began to spread like wildfire in the capital. Ever since Su Wan married into Jin Qinhuangfu, Marquis Qinchuanfu suffered all kinds of suppression in court. And because of Shen Yuxu's impulsive actions on the day of the wedding, he was punished by His Majesty to stop all military affairs and shut himself in the Fu to ponder over his mistakes. The current Marquis Qinchuanfu and 1 year ago already had too many differences. Su Jia broke off the engagement with Shen Yuxu and Shen Qingjin's reputation was swept to the ground because of the matter on New Year's Eve. For the first time, Marquis Qinchuan, Chen Che, was disappointed with his son and daughter. He originally planned to take advantage of Shen Qingjin's youth and beauty to find a good home for her. This way, he would be able to have more help in court. Unfortunately, Shen Qingjin was now disliked by many aristocrats. Even 5th Prince Qin Ting, who had always had a good impression of Shen Qingjin, recently rarely went in and out of the Shenfu. All of this made Qin Che feel vexed. Fortunately, he and Yushir still had a daughter, Shen Qingyao. Shen Qingyao had now reached the marriageable age and Qin Che had always been looking for a suitable candidate for her. And this time, the spring party held by Jin Wangfu was a rare opportunity for Shen Qingyao. Jin Wangfu's spring party invitation was hard to get even with money. Su Wan also invited all the influential children of the capital she knew according to the original owner's memory. And when she sent the invitation to Shen Jia, Su Wan only sent one. As Su-won expected, the person attending the Shinjia was indeed the second young Miss, Shin Qingyao. Ever since she was injured in the inner palace, Shin Qingyao restrained herself a lot. She and Yusher were both smart people. After becoming aware of Shin Qingjin's evil intentions, mother and daughter were very careful in everything they did. They were very afraid of being caught by Shin Qingjin. This time in the Peach Blossom Courtyard, Shin Qingyao also scrupulously abided by her role. She was especially well-behaved and docile, and this kind of disguise really received the favor of a few gongzi. Seeing Shin Qingyao and an imperial family's child getting into a heated discussion, Su-won calmly smiled. Jealousy can make people crazy, and a woman's jealousy is especially so. In the previous life, because Shin Qingyao was always jealous of her elder sister, she deliberately plotted and killed Shin Qingjin by hook or by crook. And in this life, Shin Qingjin watched as Shin Qingyao got better day by day. What would she do? Marquis Qingchuanfu, in the rear courtyard, Shin Qingjin's complexion turned green as she stared at her own face in the bronze mirror. Recently, she would often be woken up by nightmares. In that nightmare, there were the cries of babies everywhere and there was a boundless fire. In the dream, she couldn't find a way out and could only be burned alive again. Everything in the previous life was still vivid in her mind, but Shin Qingjin couldn't help but clench her fists. She thought that after she was reborn, everything could develop according to her imagination. However, everything in this world was different. Yu-ru was no longer here. Su-won gave up eldest brother and married Jin Qinwang to become a Wangfei. And eldest brother he seemed to have always misunderstood her and was unwilling to get close to her. Shin Qingyao, that slut, became even smarter and more careful in this life. It was almost very difficult for her to grab hold of her and Yusher's weakness that she didn't know when everything started to break away from Shin Qingjin's control. The only one that made her feel at ease, perhaps, was only that person. Shin Qingjin's gaze was somewhat absent-minded. She once again remembered that day when she regained consciousness in the cold and stiff state, that man's deep and concerned gaze. Second Highness, Qinyu. Shin Qingjin and he didn't have any interactions, but that day, he was the one who disregarded everything to save her when she fell into the ice cave. Moreover, that day, the gaze he looked at her with was too deep and enchanting, making Shin Qingjin involuntarily somewhat moved. After the spring garden gathering ended, there was another light rain in the imperial capital. This was the first spring rain of this year. A luxurious carriage slowly moved on the long street. When it passed by the main entrance of Marquis Qingchuanfu, the curtain of the carriage was lifted by someone, revealing a well-defined and handsome face. Qinyu stared blankly at the plaque of Marquis Qingchuanfu that was somewhat obscured by the cyan-colored rain. He didn't know why, but he remembered a certain day last winter. That day, he was ordered to leave the capital to handle some matters. As a result, he encountered a top-notch assassin on the way. One of the secret guards by his side was lost. Qinyu was protected by the remaining secret guard with all his might and finally escaped. However, the two people were still separated on the way to escape. At that time, Qinyu was also seriously injured. That day, he really thought that he was going to die in the wilderness. As a result, a cyan-clothed young girl fell from the sky and pulled him back from the edge of life and death. At that time, Qinyu's consciousness was fuzzy, but he still saw the face of the young girl who applied medicine on him and took care of him. She was Shin Qingjin. Sometimes, the heart only moved for a short moment. Before Qinyu completely lost consciousness, he vaguely saw Shin Qingjin's gentle and deep gaze as she seriously and attentively wrapped the gauze around his wound. At that time, she was leaning over his head, her soft hair lightly sweeping across Qinyu's face. That gentle sweep also swept into the depths of his heart. The carriage stopped outside the entrance of Marquis Qin Fu for a while. Finally, Qin Yu still put down the curtain and ordered the driver to drive back to his Wangfu. The rain became heavier and heavier. A young girl dressed in black quietly stood in the middle of the long street. Her black hair was already drenched by the rain, but she still stood in the same place as before, blankly looking at the direction Qin Yu's carriage left in. Shui Shui, go back. Your mission is over. A hoarse male voice came from behind. In the blue mist, a dreamlike figure gradually condensed into a tall figure beside Shui Shui. Chasing mist. Shui Shui turned around and stared at the man beside her. I am not a qualified secret guard, I was moved by the goal of my mission. Shui Shui smiled and didn't say that sentence. Once she said it, she really couldn't turn back. According to the rules of Prince Jin's mansion, the traitor will die. Although she fell in love with someone she shouldn't have, Shui Shui still remembered her mission in this life. Protect His Highness and obey His Highness' orders. Her life didn't belong to her. So, what did she have to hope for love? Chapter 129. When night fell, the spring rain, which had lasted for several hours, finally stopped. When Su Rui returned to the dormitory from the study, Su Wan had already fallen asleep. Perhaps it was because his performance on the wedding day was too fierce, causing a certain Wang Ye to be vegetarian these days. General Su felt unhappy. But his wife did not cooperate. Forcing it would destroy the relationship between husband and wife. Su Rui sat on the bed and looked at Su Wan, who was sleeping soundly. His gaze stopped on her rosy lips for a few seconds. Su Rui narrowed his eyes and suddenly leaned over to kiss Su Wan's lips. Then, he quickly lifted his face. All right, not giving meat to eat, drinking some soup is also very good on the spring night after the rain. Su Wan slept very peacefully, while a certain Wang Ye, who was bursting with energy, tossed and turned the whole night. One moment he would ravage his wife's little mouth, the next moment he would secretly touch his wife's smooth and tender skin. In short, a certain person was entertaining himself, leaving a bunch of small strawberries on Su Wan's body. He really was quite strenuous the next morning. When Su Wan opened her eyes, she found that her mouth was numb. She frowned and touched her somewhat swollen lips with her fingertips. Her complexion immediately became colorful. As a legal husband and wife, Su Wan actually did not mind properly fulfilling the duties of husband and wife, but General Su was really unreliable in this aspect. Once he did it, he completely disregarded Su Wan's feelings. In short, a certain person's skills in bed needed to be honed and some fierce and intense exercises must be stopped in moderation. Su Wan rubbed her lips and turned to look at the man who was sleeping soundly beside her. She secretly grinded her teeth. Su Rui, have you been too idle recently? A certain person who was pretending to be asleep. Seeing that Su Rui continued to pretend to be asleep, Su Wan didn't bother with him and continued to mind her own business. If you really have enough energy and know where to vent, then you should do more meaningful things. For example, help Chen Qingyao find an imperial family's fiancé. I think it's time for her to get married. Hearing Su Wan talk about proper business, Su Rui finally slowly opened his eyes. I've already chosen the candidate. Since you think the time is ripe, I'll let him go to Marquis Qin Fu to propose marriage. Oh, willing to wake up. Su Wan turned her head, leaned sideways and glanced at Su Rui. Beloved concubine, wife. Su Rui widened his eyes and put on a pitiful expression to look at Su Wan. This expression somehow made Su Wan think of Su Xiaosu. General Su, acting cute is shameful. Humph. Su Wan coldly snorted at Su Rui and then turned around, minding her own business and putting on her coat. I'll help you put it on. Su Rui, who was behind her, had always been quick. Seeing that Su Wan wanted to change clothes, he immediately snatched the coat from Su Wan's hands. General Su would never miss such an opportunity to touch his wife in broad daylight. General Su, you're really, really done. At the end of the 3rd month, Hunan Wang's heir apparent, Qin Xiang, brought a matchmaker and personally went to Marquis Qin Chuanfu to propose marriage to Qin Jia's second young miss, Qin Qingyao. To Marquis Qin Chuanfu that had been depressed for many days, this was undoubtedly an extremely joyous occasion. On that day, Shen Che held a banquet to keep Qin Xiang in the Fu for dinner before leaving. As for Madame Yu, she was naturally very satisfied with the handsome and extraordinary heir of the King of Hunan. This marriage made her grin so wide that she was unable to close her mouth. And as the person involved, Qin Qingyao, although she was a black-bellied, scheming little lowly, in terms of feelings, she was a blank. The young Qin Qingyao always felt that she was living in Qin Qingjin's shadow. She even thought that if Qin Qingjin had a beloved man in the future, she would definitely snatch him over by hook or by crook. This way, she would feel happy. But now, Qin Qingjin had clearly been given the cold shoulder by her father. In the aristocratic circle of the imperial capital, her reputation was also swept to the ground. Like this, she was no longer the daughter of Qin Fu that she needed to secretly envy and be jealous of. Actually, the Qin Qingyao at this time was a bit confused. Regarding Qin Xiang, she couldn't say that she hated him nor did she like him that much. But at Qin Jia's banquet, seeing Qin Qingjin staring at her with that secretly fierce and envious gaze, Qin Qingyao's mood immediately became refreshed. As long as she could make Qin Qingjin unhappy, she would really be happy. So the female lead and supporting female are really creatures that love and kill each other. On this day, Marquis Qin Chuanfu's banquet continued until late at night. At the end of the song, people dispersed and somewhat wearily returned to their boudoir. Qin Qingjin dismissed the servant girls at her side and smashed everything that could be smashed in the room. She was unwilling. Why should people like Su Wan and Qin Qingyao be able to obtain happiness in this lifetime? Based on what? Qin Qingjin, who was almost overwhelmed by the anger and unwillingness at the bottom of her heart, had a malevolent look in her eyes. She firmly bit her lips. She will definitely not let Qin Qingyao have an easy time, absolutely not. That if you want to destroy it, you must first make it crazy. Qin Qingjin, who had already sunk into madness, had long disregarded the suspicion and jealousy she had towards the other servant girls at her side. She still used the method she used to deal with Su Wan last time. She used her own name to send a letter to Qin Ting and used Qin Xiang's name to ask Qin Qingyao to go out and meet. The room where the two people met had long been properly arranged by Qin Qingjin. She had prepared a strong aphrodisiac. This time, Qin Qingjin had been hiding in the dark and quietly observing. She wanted to see Qin Qingyao's end with her own eyes. But unfortunately, the script did not play out according to Qin Qingjin's expectations. When the appointed time arrived, the person who came to the appointment changed from Qin Ting to Qin Yu. How could it be the Second Highness? Seeing Qin Yu step into the room that she had designed with her own eyes, Qin Qingjin was about to go out to stop him. At this time, Qin Qingyao had already arrived. Seeing the brightly dressed Qin Qingyao, Qin Qingjin's raised footsteps paused. As long as she could destroy Qin Qingyao's marriage, what did it matter who that man was? She wouldn't care. Living again, what else could she care about and lose? Seeing the two people enter the room with her own eyes, Qin Qingyao's heart gradually relaxed. She actually also used Qin Qingyao's name to invite Qin Xiang, but the time was a bit later. Although this scheme was clumsy, it could produce immediate results. Qin Qingjin really wanted to see what kind of expression Qin Qingyao's face would have when Qin Xiang ran into her scandal. Bang! Just as Jean was inwardly proud of herself, the door of the room was suddenly knocked open from the inside. Jean, who was hiding in the dark, stared blankly. The moment she raised her eyes, she saw Yu with an unkind expression rushing out. This man gazing at the direction that Yu left, Jin's heart was somewhat complicated at this time. She had been betrayed by Ting. In her heart, all men in the world were heartless people who were easily bewitched by beauty. She didn't expect that in front of beauty, Yu could brush his body and leave. Yu was a person worth entrusting, but right now, Jin had no time to think. Right now, there was only Yao left in the room. Waiting for Xiang to come, wouldn't it be easy for them? Jean hesitated for a moment, but in the end, she still boldly walked out from the dark. She cautiously and slowly walked to the door of the room and stuck her head out from the side to look inside. At this time, the door of the entire room was wide open, but the room was empty. How could it be like this? Jean was startled. She subconsciously rushed into the room. The fragrance in the room had long dispersed and Yao, who should have been in the room, had disappeared without a trace. Jie, are you looking for me? A mellow and pleasant voice suddenly came from behind her. Jean slowly turned around and in the next moment, her entire body froze in place. Yao stood outside the door with a smile on her face. Beside her stood two tall and slender figures. It was impressively Yu and Shu. Jean, I didn't think that you would really be so vicious. Shu looked at his younger sister with a face full of grief. Why did his most beloved younger sister become like this now? Where did that Jean who had no shrewdness in her heart go? Go, big brother, listen to me. Seeing Shu's figure, Jean panicked. She quickly rushed in front of Shu, wanting to explain to him, but Shu coldly shook off her hand. You don't need to quibble anymore. I don't have a younger sister like you. Suwon's matter was originally a knot in Shu's heart. Now that he saw Jean use the same old trick to frame his other younger sister, Shu really gave up on this younger sister of his. There was already nothing worthy of his concern and nostalgia in this imperial capital. He should leave. Seeing Shu turn around and leave without the slightest hesitation, Jean froze in place, tears involuntarily sliding down her face. Gidge, in this life, am I going to lose even you? After Shu left, Yao also followed and left. The current Jean was no longer that naive and unaffected eldest young miss of Qinjia. The woman in front of her who was muddled by hatred and whose mind was filled with schemes and revenge was no longer worthy of Yao's envy and jealousy. When Jean returned to her senses, only Yu remained in front of her. Why haven't you left? Even the Second Highness intends to ridicule me. Jean looked at the man in front of her, her gaze filled with coldness. Yu didn't speak, only using his attentive gaze to look at the person in front of him whose face was covered with tears. I don't know why you want to do such a thing. If you are unhappy in Qinjia, I will marry you. I will marry you. These three words sounded in Jin's ears like a clap of thunder. She looked at the man in front of her in disbelief. Only after a long time did Jean find her voice and somewhat trembled as she opened her mouth to ask, why? Why? Yu was somewhat absent-minded, just because his heart was moved for a split second. Even if he knew that she had done such a despicable thing, he was still willing to tolerate her. Just because she was the first woman that he, Yu, fell in love with. The spring wind blew steeply and the chill was thick. When everyone had left this place of trouble, an enormous white tiger unhurriedly came out from the woods not far away. A certain Tiger King who was finally able to come out of the Wangfu to let loose once expressed that hiding in the woods to peep and whatnot was not Ben Wang's style. Only you humans would be this immoral. Truly too immoral. Right now, following at the white tiger's side, two immoral figures leisurely appeared. Both of them were draped in heavy cloaks. Today's big play, although Chen Jin personally wrote the script and she also put in a lot of effort to play the role of the tragic female lead, the real director and planner were Su Wan and Su Rui. After today's matter, Chen Jin had no way of continuing to stay in Marquis Qingchuan Fu. Right now, Qin Yu was Chen Jin's only salvation. Such a powerful and affectionate man, when she was in the most difficult and most dire straits, extended his hand to her. This was the beauty in a hopeless situation, but if one day, Qin Yu discovered that the Chen Jin he loved was actually not the real Chen Jin, who knows how he would feel. A person's feelings were fragile and would shatter with a touch, but at the same time, they were hard and indestructible. I love you only because that person is you. I love you, not other people, also only because at that time, at that place, the person I met was you, not other people. Just like Su Wan and Su Rui, the beginning of every segment of fate was accidental, but also inevitable. Just like Qin Yu, this kind of good man who had the halo of a romantic male lead, his heart would only be moved once in his lifetime. Chen Qingyao and Qin Xiang's marriage was originally set at the end of the 4th month, but the Second Highness suddenly proposed marriage to Chen Jia and disrupted Chen Jia's arrangements. The two people's wedding had no choice but to be postponed. Chen Jia's 2 daughters married into the imperial family one after the other. This should have been a matter worthy of celebration, but the decline of Marquis Qingchuan Fu also started from this year. On the day Chen Jin married, Chen Yushu had already brought his army to the border. Towards his own younger sister, towards the imperial capital, he had already given up. On the night of the wedding, Chen Jin was like the first time she got married, nervously waiting for her husband. But for the entire night, Qin Yu did not take a step into the bridal chamber. The next day, Chen Jin heard from the mommy of the Wangfu that assassins had infiltrated the Wangfu last night and Wang Ye was almost assassinated. And at the critical moment of life and death, it was a black-clothed young lady who saved Wang Ye. Because of this, that young lady had been seriously injured and unconscious, and Wang Ye had been guarding her bedside without taking off his clothes. He had already guarded her for the entire night. 3 years later, Qin Mu Feng, whose body had always been robust, suddenly contracted a serious illness and passed away. Crown Prince Qin Yu ascended the throne according to his will. The new emperor ascended the throne and the court was in turmoil. The once declining Marquis Qingchuan Fu was suddenly put in an important position by the emperor. Many people did not know the inside story, but the people in the imperial family who were well versed in information knew the secret inside. It turned out that Chen Jia's eldest young miss, Chen Jin, who had married the second prince 3 years ago, was said to have never been favored in the Wangfu. The second prince had never even consummated the marriage with her. But under this premise, a year ago, Chen Sufei suddenly became pregnant. The existence of this child was simply an insult to the imperial family. According to the rules of the imperial family, Chen Jin and her child would undoubtedly die. But in the end, the emperor summoned the second prince and the crown prince together into the palace. The father and son trio talked for a long time, and in the end, the lives of Chen Jin and the child in her belly were saved. The affairs of the world were so wonderful. With Su Wan and Su Rui's plan, the male lead Qin Yu fell in love with Zhui Shui. Since then, he did not pay any attention to the female lead, treating her as nothing. But this also could not stop the female lead's exceptionally attractive cheat halo. In the end, Chen Jin, who was unwilling to be left out, still successfully paired up with one of the male supporting characters, the crown prince. The so-called past life and this life, everything was like a joke. Chen Jin was unwilling to accept that in her past life, she was crowned with the crime of adultery. She was even more unwilling for the child in her belly to be called a vile spawn. And in this life, everything was chosen by herself. Even if she felt that her conscience was clear, that she and the Crown Prince were truly in love, and that she and Qin Yu simply did not have the reality of a husband and wife. Even if she had thousands and tens of thousands of reasons, but in the eyes of the world, she was still that red-sleeved, fickle and shameless woman. The Crown Prince ascended to the throne and granted amnesty to the world. The other princes in the capital had already made plans to be exiled from the capital. But at this time, a mysterious army suddenly appeared outside the capital. The leader of this army was impressively Qin Hao. In 3 years, Qin Hao had already been reborn with Su Rui's help and controlled his own troops. This time, he wanted to use his own strength to personally take back the great rivers and mountains that should have belonged to his royal father. Standing on the highest observation tower in the capital, seeing the soldiers outside the city walls, Su Wan couldn't help but clench Su Rui's hand. The day Qin Hao breaks into the city, let's leave. In the same generation of the imperial family, the only person who could contend against Qin Hao was Qin Yu. And now, because of Zhui Shui's relationship, Qin Yu had already formed an alliance with Su Rui and secretly reached an agreement with Qin Hao. Therefore, when Qin Hao's army attacked the capital, the day of the new emperor being abolished was just around the corner. Once the new emperor died, Chen Qingjin would lose her hard-won, true love. Then, Su Wan's mission this time would also be perfectly completed. Hearing Su Wan's words, Su Rui couldn't help but hold Su Wan's hand, then he coughed and whispered in Su Wan's ear, that recently I've read a lot of books. Before leaving, I'll accompany you to bathe again, okay? This time, I absolutely won't hurt you. Su Wan, glancing at Su Rui, Su Wan couldn't help but pinch his palm. This is what you said, you can't act recklessly again. As a result, many days later, when blood flowed like a river in the capital, Jin Qinwang Fu's heavily guarded inner courtyard, which was like a paradise, was instead a scene of boundless spring. Stop, I can't take it anymore, I'm going to die. What happened to the promised improvement in skills? What happened to the promise not to get hurt? In the dense mist, Su Rui's eyes were gloomy and Su Wan's voice was still hoarse from shouting. She knew it would be this result. But seeing that he endured for so long, even if it was more painful, she wouldn't refuse him at this time. In the dead of night, when Su Rui finally kissed the corner of Su Wan's lips with satisfaction, Su Wan weakly smiled at him. Only then did she contact headquarters in her heart, preparing to withdraw from the mission. Chapter 130. After Su Wan opened her eyes in the executor's warehouse, the pain that felt like she was run over by a car finally disappeared. She stood up and moved her body. For the first time, Su Wan felt that her body was also great. Cough. A certain someone who was completely ignored coughed a few times. Ah. Su Wan just noticed that Yi Axayan had been standing not far away and staring at her. Do you need something? Su Wan looked up at Yi Axayan's face and asked with a cold expression. In each mission world, she could play a variety of people, but in the real world, Su Wan was actually a very cold person. Before meeting Su Rui, she had been living in her own world. She didn't have any friends and didn't need this kind of thing like friends. Really cold. Although Yi Axayan couldn't help but ridicule in her heart, her face still raised a bright smile. This year's cross-department test, I will bring you and Ding Jijia to participate together. Ding Jijia. Su Wan heard this name and frowned slightly. She didn't have any friends in the lost space, but Su Wan still had an impression of the few people in her department who were similar to her in rank. Ding Jijia had a lowly face, but she had a devilish figure that made others envious. That fellow was a proper snake and scorpion beauty, specialized in trapping the male lead for 100 years. Actually, Su Wan was still very optimistic about Ding Jijia's business ability, but she just couldn't stand that fellow's problem of being smitten when she saw a handsome guy. It must be known that there were many departments in the lost time space. Everyone had first-hand information about their competitors. And someone like Ding Jie, whose weakness was extremely obvious, could easily be eliminated in the preliminaries. Seeing Su Wan frown, Yi Axian also knew what Su Wan was worried about. She stepped forward and raised her hand, wanting to pat Su Wan's shoulder, but Su Wan nimbly dodged it. Yi Axian, that she suddenly felt vexed. What should she do? Cough. Clearing her throat, Yi Axian still looked at Su Wan with a smile on her face. This time, I will instruct Ding Jie to pay attention to her image. And, actually, I specifically waited for you here because I wanted you to help me think about how to deal with Su Su. On their side, Su Suk should still be bringing Qi Mu and Yunxing. Because everyone's golden fingers can't be used, those two people aren't a problem. But Su Su is very troublesome. You should also know that. In the lost time space, Su Su was a very special existence. Because after using the heart-burying box, even if Su Su entered the trial world, he would still not have a heart. He had no desires, and he had no flaws. The way to deal with him, Su Wan spread her hands towards Yi Axian with some difficulty. If I knew how to deal with him, I wouldn't be standing here, and he wouldn't. Live until today. Okay. Yi Axian heard Su Wan's answer. Although she had already expected this, she was still a little disappointed. Then I won't disturb you anymore. Oh, by the way, Ding Jie is waiting to use cabin 3. I know. Su Wan nodded and walked out of the executive room. She had already told Su Rui in the last world that she would change to the number 2 executive room this time, so when she left here, Su Wan didn't feel nostalgic at all. As long as she thought that she could do missions with Su Rui in every world in the future and didn't have to be alone, Su Wan's usually cold face couldn't help but reveal a rare gentleness. At the door, Ding Jie and Su Wan brushed past each other. Noticing the faint smile on Su Wan's lips, Ding Jie, who had just walked to the door, staggered and almost fell at the door. Your mother, this baby must have had an illusion just now. Su Wan can also smile. Impossible, this is absolutely impossible. Shaking her head, Ding Jie habitually raised her wrist and looked at the new mission on her communicator. It's really boring recently. The handsome guys in the mission world are either brainless or abnormal. It is said that there is a very fierce newcomer over there. He is extremely demonic and wild. How come I haven't met him even once after entering so many space-time spaces? Should I locate him next time? Should I? While Ding Jie was struggling to locate a certain newcomer, in the headquarters of the Plane Restorer, Su Rui's newly bought locator had begun to flash, indicating that Su Wan had entered the mission. Su Rui smiled and did not hesitate to walk into his own execution room, number 11. His ranking had been stuck at this position because all the points were meaningless to him now that when Su Rui closed his eyes in the execution room and connected to the mission world, the door of the number 11 execution room was suddenly pushed open from the outside. Looking at the slowly closing execution room, Yunxing couldn't help but smile bitterly. I'm a step late. As he spoke, he looked down at the stack of information in his hand that he had just copied from Su Su. This was the specific information of all the elite personnel in the other departments. Although he didn't know why Suji wanted him to give all this to Su Rui, seeing that Su Rui had entered the mission room, Yunxing had to turn and leave. In the entire headquarters of the Plane Restorer, no one knew the real reason why Su Su recruited Su Rui. Yunxing was naturally the same as others. He didn't know that Su Rui had a natural golden finger that others didn't have. Su Rui's spiritual ability was naturally stronger than others, and his perception was also full of value. This also meant that no matter which spacetime he entered, no matter what the person he was looking for became, as long as he remembered that person's soul undulation, he would be able to easily capture that familiar spiritual undulation in a sea of people. Therefore, General Su opened a cheat, and in the cross-department trial, Su Suk planned to use Su Rui, this deeply hidden trump card. In the mission world, Su Wan was forcefully pushed awake by someone. Su Wan, hand in your homework. The slightly immature female voice carried a trace of timidity. Su Wan's consciousness gradually sobered up. Homework. What the hell is this? She couldn't help but raise her hand and rub her somewhat uncomfortable head. With her movements, everything in her line of sight gradually became clear. Su Wan realized that she was sitting in a clean and tidy classroom. There were a lot of seats in the classroom, but most of them were empty. Su Wan. It was still the girl from before. This time, her tone was more cautious. Are you not feeling well? Do you want me to take you to the school clinic? Do you want me to help you find Teacher Wen? No, there's no need. Su Wan shook her head and looked at the girl wearing a blue school uniform suit and thick glasses with a slightly scrutinizing gaze. She should be called Su No, the class monitor of this class. The original owner's brain was still messy because of last night's hangover. Fortunately, Su Wan had roughly known the mission plot of this world before entering the mission. The plot of this mission world was very simple. The story took place in an aristocratic school. Actually, it had nothing to do with the school. The original owner Su Wan was the recognized campus belle of this school. Sure enough, the campus belle in the mission world was used as cannon fodder. As a campus belle, Su Wan was naturally surrounded by flower protectors. Her boyfriend, no, now perhaps it should be called ex-boyfriend. Su Wan's ex-boyfriend Luo Yu was the male lead in this world. He was a top student, a tall, rich and handsome top student, a cool and domineering top student. Originally, Su Wan and Luo Yu could be regarded as a talented man and a beautiful woman. Their family backgrounds were comparable and they were very well matched. But just last semester, this school called Fongheng Aristocratic College suddenly recruited a special enrollment student from outside. Special enrollment students have always been synonymous with poor ghost, bookworm, and so on. They have always been disliked in aristocratic schools, but this time the special enrollment student was a little different. The female special enrollment student named Jiang Yu was not only outstanding in appearance, but also had outstanding martial arts skills. It was said that because she had been a martial arts substitute for a popular star, she was recommended by that star to be specially enrolled in this college. Tuition and accommodation fees were all free. The arrival of Jiang Yu changed the style of the whole school. As long as there is a fight, there will be Jiang Yu's figure. As long as there is a place to bully the weak, there will be Jiang Yu to help. As long as there is a stray dog or a stray cat, there will be the smiling and kind figure of the female lead. In short, she is light, she is electricity, she is the legend of Fongheng. In just one semester, Jiang Yu became famous in the school and was named the goddess of the new generation by many outstanding boys. Of course, Luo Yu also appreciated Jiang Yu very much at this time. Even after breaking up with Su Wan, Luo Yu immediately began to pursue Jiang Yu in a high-profile manner. But this is actually not the root of the contradiction between Su Wan and Jiang Yu. In fact, although the background of this world takes place on campus, all the main plots take place in the Su family. In D City, the Su family is also a famous family. Su Wan's father, Su Haiqing, started his business in a seafood restaurant. Now, the Su family's industry not only involves the catering industry, but also the department store industry and supermarket chain. Su Haiqing's wife, Wen Shu, was a lady from a famous family in D City. When they were young, both of them were enthusiastic volunteers for public welfare. Both of them had taught in remote villages, and it was at that time that they met and fell in love. Later, the two got married locally, and not long after they got married, they had Su Wan. Because when Shu's health has been poor, for the sake of his wife's body and his daughter's future, Su Haiqing decided to take his wife and daughter to leave the mountains and return to D City to work hard. After many years of unremitting efforts, he finally has today's wealth and status. Because the couple only have one daughter, Su Wan, in the past 10 years, the two have overly spoiled their daughter, which has also led to a lot of small problems in the original owner, delicate, willful, princess syndrome. These problems weren't big, but they weren't small either. Because she had been spoiled since she was a child, the original owner never felt that she had any particularly big shortcomings. Until one day, the real female lead Jiang Yu appeared, and Su Wan's whole life was completely subverted. It turned out that Jiang Yu, who came out of the mountains, came to D City to find relatives. All of this starts with Jiang Yu's life experience. She was born in a single-parent family and was raised by her hardworking mother. When Jiang Yu was 8 years old, in order to let her have a school, Jiang Yu's mother, Xiao Mei, took her to the small county town. The mother and daughter rented a leaky bungalow. Xiao Mei had to work 5 jobs a day from morning to night to afford Jiang Yu's expenses in school and the living expenses of 2 people. After years of accumulation, Xiao Mei's body finally collapsed. At this time, Jiang Yu was already 17 years old. In fact, during the 9 years that Jiang Yu lived in the county town, she often sneaked out to pick up garbage and sell it for money. It was also at that time that Jiang Yu met the brothers Xiao Qi and Xiao Yuni. The father of the two was a local gangster, but he was hacked to death by an enemy in a fight. Since then, Xiao Qi and Xiao Yuni were adopted by a martial arts master. They relied on martial arts to support their family since childhood, and Jiang Yu naturally learned a lot of martial arts with Xiao Qi. Until Xiao Mei fell ill, the hospital said that if Xiao Mei wanted to get better, she could only do a kidney transplant surgery, and this surgery not only required a matching kidney, but also a large amount of medical expenses. Jiang Yu was desperate and went to the Xiao brothers for help. Xiao Qi lent Jiang Yu a sum of money and helped her find a job as a martial arts substitute. Jiang Yu finally made a sum of money, enough to pay the first hospitalization fee. At this time, the hospital suddenly informed Jiang Yu that her blood type did not match Xiao Mei's, so she could not exchange her kidney to Xiao Mei. At this time, Xiao Mei, who was already dying, finally cried and told Jiang Yu the truth of the matter. It turned out that Jiang Yu was not her biological daughter. In the clinic in the mountains, Xiao Mei and Wen Shu gave birth to children on the same day, and both of them gave birth to daughters. At that time, because Wen Shu was weak, she fainted after giving birth. Xiao Mei took advantage of the absence of the midwife to exchange the 2 girls. At that time, she was really selfish. Her husband had just died. She was afraid that she could not support her daughter, so she was possessed for a while. 2 months later, Xiao Mei regretted it, but Su Haiqing's family had already moved away. Xiao Mei has always felt that she owed Jiang Yu for more than 10 years. She tried her best to give her the best, but unfortunately, in the end, her body collapsed first. Xiao Mei did not survive the surgery after all, and she left some clues and a photo, instructing Jiang Yu to go to D City to find her biological parents, and also to help take care of Xiao Mei's biological daughter. Jiang Yu set foot in D City with her adoptive mother's wish and determination to find her relatives, and after some twists and turns, she finally found her biological parents. Just overnight, Jiang Yu changed from a village girl to the eldest daughter of the Su family, and Su Wan also fell from heaven to hell overnight. Although the Su couple resented Xiao Mei from the bottom of their hearts, the children were innocent. They had also given too much affection to Su Wan over the years, so in the end, the couple did not let Su Wan leave the Su family, but let her and Jiang Yu be sisters. From a genuine miss to a dependent, the gap in Su Wan's heart can be imagined. Depressed, she began to drink and began to skip classes. After a long time, the feelings between her and Luo Yu became weaker and weaker. When Su Wan came back to her senses and wanted to save it, Luo Yu had been moved by the strong and brave Jiang Yu, and did not hesitate to break up with Su Wan and began to pursue Jiang Yu. Chapter 131. The early morning sun shone through the clean and bright floor-to-ceiling windows of the classroom, making people unable to open their eyes. Not all the students in the classroom of grade 2 and 3 had arrived yet. Looking at the unfamiliar yet familiar tender faces around her, Su Wan opened the school bag on her seat. Other than a few brand new teaching materials, there wasn't even a pen inside. So what homework? How could that kind of thing exist? I didn't bring homework. Su Wan emptied her school bag, and then brought the deflated school bag in front of Su Nuo and shook it hard in front of her eyes. Ah, it's okay, it's okay. Su Nuo didn't expect Su Wan to talk to herself so kindly. In recent days, Su Wan's whole person seemed to have eaten gunpowder. Whoever talked to her would be shot. Su Nuo waved her hand at Su Wan and turned to leave. Just when she turned around, she seemed to suddenly think of something and hesitantly stopped. She looked at Su Wan with a hesitant face. Su Wan, that. Your complexion is very bad. If you're really not feeling well, I'd better take you to the school's clinic, okay? To be honest, Su Wan's current appearance does look pretty bad. Last night, the original owner of the body drank beer the whole night. In the morning, she came to class in a daze with dark circles under her eyes and a wrinkled school uniform. The first thing she did when she sat in her seat was to sleep. In this state, it would be strange if the complexion on her face looked good. Feeling the concern and nervousness in Su Nuo's tone, Su Wan couldn't help but smile at her. I'm fine, I will ask teacher Wen for leave. Wen Wenhao, T University's top student, the new class teacher of grade 2 and 3. In the memory of the original owner, teacher Wen is a very handsome and gentle man, but she must not know that this Wen Wenhao is actually the heir of a big family, and he will be one of Jiang Yu's pursuers in the future. Speaking of the devil, Su Wan was thinking of Jiang Yu, and Jiang Yu's slender figure had already appeared at the door of the class. Yes, the two of them are still classmates. Jiang Yu was tall and inherited Wen Shu's beauty. Although she wore a uniform blue school uniform, she stood in front of everyone with a distinctive aura. At this time, Jiang Yu's beautiful eyes turned around the classroom. When she saw Su Wan's figure, her eyes immediately lit up, and then she went straight to Su Wan. Xiao Wan, why didn't you go home last night? Do you know how worried Mom and Dad were? Jiang Yu's voice was very crisp. At this time, she did not deliberately lower her voice. With her question, the noisy classroom suddenly quieted down. He didn't go back for the whole night. If this happened to an adult, it would be a very normal thing, but they were still students. This year, everyone was only 17 years old, not yet adults. Most importantly, Su Wan was a girl, a beautiful campus flower. The beautiful campus belle stayed out all night and whatnot. This was definitely the best title to flood the campus BBS, okay? Feeling that the people around her were whispering, Jiang Yu was also stunned for a moment, and then she awkwardly scratched her head at Su Wan. Xiao Wan, I don't mean that, I mean, Jiang Yu wanted to explain something, but Su Wan suddenly put the empty school bag on her shoulder, and then stood up indifferently. I don't want to know what you mean, and it's not your turn to intervene in my affairs. Speaking of this, Su Wan did not look at Jiang Yu, carried her school bag and walked towards the door of the classroom with her head held high. Xiao Wan. Jiang Yu did not give up. She rushed to the door of the classroom and blocked Su Wan's way. Xiao Wan, the monthly exam is coming soon, you can't skip class anymore. Who said I was going to skip class? Su Wan lazily raised her eyelids at Jiang Yu, and the corner of her mouth raised a mocking smile. I didn't bring stationery, can I go home and get it? Jiangyu, don't always be so self-righteous. A lot of things are not necessarily right just because you think they are right. Get out of the way. After saying this, Su-won forcefully brushed away Jiangyu's arm that was blocking her and strode out of the classroom. Jiangyu stood at the door of the classroom, staring blankly at the direction of Su-won's departure. At this moment, the expression on her face was full of grievance and sadness, but these negative emotions were quickly suppressed by her. She habitually patted her white cheek and smirked at herself. Jiangyu, you can do it. One day, Su-won will like you. General Su is looking at you darkly. Do you feel it? Girl. As if to prove her determination, Jiangyu clenched her small fist again, and then smiled and turned back to the classroom. At this time, a straight figure was standing by the window of the classroom corridor, and Jiangyu's every move just fell into his eyes. What an interesting girl. The young man by the window muttered to himself, then turned around and slowly left. The playground of Fongheng campus is particularly large. In order to ensure the safety of the campus, the school prohibits cars from entering the campus. Of course, all rules are meant to be broken. Su-won was wandering around the campus playground with an empty school bag, and a Porsche sports car rushed in the direction of the playground. Perhaps because there was no one else on the playground at this time, Su-won, who was wandering alone, became a very obvious target. Creak. Accompanied by the roar of the motor and the shrill sound of the brakes, the red Porsche sports car stopped in front of Su-won. Su-won's face remained unchanged, and her eyes calmly watched a red-haired boy jump out of the sports car. This red-haired boy, Su-won knows, Ling Qing, the heir of Ling's enterprise, is also a third-year student of Fongheng School, and one of the best friends of Luoyu. Ling Qing is also an influential figure in Fongheng, and he, who has always been high-profile, will never be low-key when he can be high-profile. Su-won, I haven't seen you for a few days, why are you so down? When Ling Qing was in the car, he actually saw Su-won's haggard face. When Su-won and Luoyu were together in the past, she had a lot of small problems. A delicate girl like her had never been the type that Ling Qing liked. Now that Luoyu finally came to a realization and broke up with Su-won, Ling Qing finally met Su-won once, and naturally couldn't let go of the opportunity to ridicule Su-won and embarrass her. In the face of Ling Qing's ridicule, Su-won just looked at him quietly, then picked up her school bag, turned in a direction, and silently walked towards the school gate. There are not many other things in this world, but there are a lot of mad dogs who support the female lead. This Ling Qing will also be Jiangyu's pursuer in the future, and even because of Jiangyu, he and Luoyu became enemies. Of course, how to compete for the female lead, whether it is 1, 3, 5 or 2, 4 or 6, this is the business of that group of men. The main thing Su-won has to consider is actually, where is Su-rui? Because there are too many supporting male characters who like, love, and openly or secretly love Jiangyu in this world, and many of these people have never been seen by the original owner, so Su-won can't estimate Su-rui's identity at all. According to the original plot of this world, Su-won is going to be killed by cannon fodder, and the reason why she is cannon fodder is because she doesn't know what's good for her and goes against Jiangyu again and again. In the near future, there will be many excellent men around Jiangyu. These men are stronger and more ruthless than one. The original owner Su-won finally died in the hands of a gang boss, and the boss's acquaintance with Jiangyu was also very dramatic. At that time, the man's gang was in internal strife. He was seriously injured and fainted in the alley. Finally, he was kindly picked up by Jiangyu, who passed by after school and brought home. Chapter 132. Su family's villa is not far from Fongheng College. When Su-won left the school gate, she sent a message to Wen Wenhao and asked for a class leave, and then took a taxi back to Sue family. Early in the morning, Sue Haiching had already gone to the company to work. When Sue Wan opened the door and entered the house, the hourly worker at home, Aunt Zhang, was cleaning. "Miss, you are back." Seeing Sue Wan's figure, Aunt Zhang immediately put down the rag in her hand and looked at her nervously and respectfully. Aunt Zhang has been working in the Sue family for several years, and she is also very clear about the temper of eldest Miss Sue. Especially after the appearance of Jiang Yu, the real eldest Miss, Sue Wan's temper is getting worse day by day. Children at this age are actually rebellious and chinibu. Like the original owner, she suddenly changed from a princess to a Cinderella, and the gap in her heart can be imagined. Just like every naughty and rebellious brat, they don't really want to dominate. Perhaps, they just want to get a little more attention from others. Sue Wan was originally the princess of this family. She had no worries about food and clothing and had unlimited love from her parents. Since Jiang Yu appeared, because the Sue couple felt that they owed their biological daughter, they subconsciously wanted to double their kindness to Jiang Yu, and Jiang Yu was particularly considerate and sensible, so the feelings of the family of three rose sharply. The original owner felt that she was neglected and abandoned, which was also inevitable. In fact, there are no parents in the world, and Sue Haiching and his wife are kind and enthusiastic people. In all honesty, they have treated Sue Wan very well. In the original plot, because Sue Wan was jealous of Jiang Yu, she robbed her beloved people one by one, and she resented Jiang Yu for robbing her parents, so she went against Jiang Yu everywhere, and in the end, she embarked on a path of being cannon fodder. Sue Wan. A gentle male voice interrupted Sue Wan's thoughts. She stood in the living room and subconsciously looked up and saw the thin figure on the stairs. The man on the stairs was wearing a clean and fresh beige sweater, leaning against the stairs, slender fingers gently resting on the handrail of the stairs. Sue Wan subconsciously glanced at his hands. These hands are used to save people, and at the same time, they are also sharp weapons for killing people. "You're here." Sue Wan retracted her gaze, and according to the tone of the original owner in her memory, she greeted the man indifferently. "What's wrong? You don't even call me big brother anymore." The man on the stairs smiled warmly at Sue Wan and then slowly walked down the stairs step by step. The man was very handsome and his brows had a rare elegance and gentleness. This kind of person's smile was like a spring breeze and it was hard for people to hate him. But, as it happened, Sue Wan had an extremely strong vigilance towards this kind of jade-like gentleman. She couldn't help it. The shadow that Sue So left on her back then was too big. As long as she saw this cultured and refined noble son, she would feel a strong sense of disgust. Su Yu walked gracefully in front of Sue Wan and looked at his cousin with gentle eyes. It was obviously the same face, but the girl in front of him gave Su Yu a very strange feeling. His eyes flashed, but his face still maintained the gentle smile as usual. Aunt's health is getting worse and worse. I just checked her and she fell asleep. Sue Wan, if you have time, spend more time with her. Sue Wan actually knew that when Shu didn't have much time left. Hearing Su Yu's words, Sue Wan nodded seriously. I know, I will spend more time with her. With that, Sue Wan stepped up to go upstairs. At the moment of passing, Su Yu suddenly grabbed Sue Wan's shoulder. Sue Wan frowned in pain and turned to look at Su Yu with a cold face. What are you doing? There's something on your shoulder. Su Yu smiled at Sue Wan, and then raised his hands without a trace, looking innocent. Sue Wan didn't say anything and carried her school bag back to her bedroom on the second floor. As soon as she entered the door, Sue Wan immediately leaned against the door with a pale face. She pulled open her school uniform and tilted her head to check her shoulder. At this time, her white shoulder had left a slender finger mark, and the red mark was particularly conspicuous. Sue Wan drooped her eyelids, really an unfriendly guy. According to the mission plot grasped by Su-won, Su-yu is a doctor on the surface, but in fact, he is an S-class killer who has been wanted by Interpol for many years. His existence is similar to an invisible plug-in. When the Su family is in trouble, he will take action. When Jeong-yu and her man are plotted against by the enemy, he will also take action. Just now, the two people only met face to face, but it was obvious that Su-yu, who had the keen intuition of a super killer, had doubts about himself, and he had no scruples and directly made a move. This was a test, but also a warning. After rearranging her clothes, Su-won no longer thought about Su-yu, but found her stationery and other learning tools on the messy desk according to the memory of the original owner. After packing everything, Su-won turned and went downstairs. Outside the villa, a black Lexus was parked quietly outside the door. Seeing Su-won coming out with her school bag, Su-yu, who was sitting in the driver's seat, smiled and lowered the window. "Going to school?" "I'll take you." Su-won didn't answer, but still walked silently to the car, opened the door and sat quietly on the back seat. Along the way, Su-won leaned on the back seat and closed her eyes, and Su-yu was also very focused on driving. Neither of them spoke until the car stopped at the school gate. Su-won still silently opened the door and got out of the car. Seeing that she was about to leave without saying a word, Su-yu finally said slowly, "Su-won, uncle and aunt have always regarded you as their biological daughter. You don't let them down." Su-won's figure paused for a moment. She turned slightly sideways and glanced at Su-yu in the car. "I know." Leaving these 3 words, Su-won shook her head and strode away with her school bag on her back. Su-yu sat in the car and quietly watched the petite figure get farther and farther until it disappeared. He then retracted his gaze, raised his slender hands, crossed his hands and smiled softly. "Obedient children are good children. If you don't obey, you can only disappear." With a flash of light in his eyes, Su-yu started the car and drove away. When Su-won returned to the classroom, the second class was halfway through. She knocked on the door and didn't go to see the teacher's face. She went straight back to her seat and sat down. Then she took out the book from her school bag and listened attentively. The high school curriculum in this world is not difficult. As a person who has been taught by a special tutor, Su-won has no pressure during the class. The morning passed by unknowingly. When the bell rang for the lunch break, the classroom was immediately filled with cheers. Everyone scrambled to get out of the classroom. At this time, a tall figure appeared at the door of Class 2 and Class 3 on time. When Su-won and Luo-yu were together, she went to find Luo-yu during the lunch break, but now, Luo-yu has to report here every day. Of course, the person he wants to see is Jeong-yu. Sure enough, only favored people will have such preferential treatment. Seeing the figure of senior Luo-yu, all the boys in the class looked fanatical. When a person is too good, so good that you don't even have the courage to envy, jealousy, and hate, you can only worship him fanatically. And top student Luo is such a particularly excellent person. The entire Fongheng, regardless of men or women, can only bow to him. Su-won has been sitting in her seat and slowly packing up her things. The school's schoolwork is just a waste of time for her. Now Su-won is already thinking about her future path. She knows that the original owner has a zodiac card. The card stores her New Year's money and pocket money over the years. Now she has saved up 100,000 yuan. This money is enough for Su-won to find a place to live outside and then slowly develop her career. Su-won did not leave her seat, and Jeong-yu in the classroom did not leave either. When everyone else left, only Luo-yu's figure was left at the door. Luo-yu was very tall and had a good figure. He was naturally dazzling when he stood there. After being watched by people passing by in the corridor for a while, Luo-yu frowned slightly and simply walked directly to the classroom, looking at Jeong-yu from afar. "Jeong-yu, let's go." Hearing Luo Yu's words, Jiang Yu's eyes turned, smiled and came to Su Wan's desk, looked at her sideways with a smile. Xiao Wan, let's go eat together. Jiang Yu knows that Su Wan likes Luo Yu, so, even if Luo Yu is a particularly excellent person, he is also the person her sister likes, and she can't snatch his love. Obviously, Jiang Yu still wants to bring Luo Yu and Su Wan back together, but she seems to have forgotten that there is a word in this world called the more you help, the busier you become. Sure enough, when Luo Yu heard Jiang Yu's words, his slender eyes subconsciously fell on Su Wan's face, and his eyes revealed a trace of coldness without concealing it. In Luo Yu's heart, Jiang Yu has always been so warm and kind, but she is too kind to see Su Wan's malice towards her at all. I have an appointment. Su Wan finally packed up her things and slowly looked up at Jiang Yu and Luo Yu. Seeing that Jiang Yu still wanted to say something, Su Wan added in a cold tone, also, don't always put me and this guy together in the future. I am not very familiar with him, please let me go. As she spoke, Su Wan stood up, bypassed Luo Yu's side and walked out quickly. Xiao Wan. Jiang Yu yelled again behind her. Seeing Su Wan's footsteps kept leaving, Jiang Yu's face was anxious, and she lifted her foot to chase after her. As a result, she was pulled by Luo Yu next to her. What are you pulling me for? Jiang Yu anxiously wanted to break free from Luo Yu's grip. She doesn't want to appreciate your kindness at all, why do you want to ask for trouble? Luo Yu looked at the stubborn Jiang Yu in front of him, and his heart was a little distressed for her. She worked so hard to get Su Wan's approval, but what about the other party? That woman doesn't know what's good for her. Seeing that Luo Yu's face was full of coldness when he mentioned Su Wan, Jiang Yu couldn't help but bite her lip. Xiao Wan is also very kind, she just has a misunderstanding about me, and it will get better once the misunderstanding is eliminated. Luo Yu, don't always target her, in fact, Xiao Wan, she really likes you. Speaking of this, Jiang Yu's tone was a bit complicated. In fact, she also appreciated Luo Yu, such an excellent and elegant boy, but whenever Jiang Yu remembered Su Wan's soulless appearance after being lovelorn, she forced herself not to have a little delusion towards Luo Yu. She likes me? What about you? You don't like me? Luo Yu was startled when he heard Jiang Yu's words, and then he suddenly leaned over, and his tall body instantly pressed the slender Jiang Yu against the desk at the side. Looking at the handsome face that was getting closer and closer, Jiang Yu's heartbeat accelerated uncontrollably. Jiang Yu's face turned red, and her tone involuntarily became urgent. I didn't. No. Then why are you blushing? Luo Yu looked at Jiang Yu's flushed face because of shyness, and couldn't help but get closer. His long eyelashes were about to touch Jiang Yu's cheek. At this time, a weak female voice suddenly sounded outside the classroom. Jiang Yu, there are two people looking for you at the school gate, they said, they are your friends. Su Nuo stood outside the classroom with an embarrassed face. She didn't expect to see such a scene. Chapter 133. Fengheng School has its own cafeteria, but the students in the school are still used to eating in private restaurants outside the school, and all the restaurants around this aristocratic school are very high-end. During the lunch break, there were a lot of people at the school gate. Occasionally, there would be people like Ling Qing driving a sports car and whistling through the school gate with beautiful women. Su Wan came out late. There were not many people at the school gate at this time on weekdays, but today there were a lot of people around the gate, and many people seemed to be watching the fun. For this kind of gossip, both the original owner and Su Wan were not very enthusiastic. Just as Su Wan wanted to go around, Jiang Yu's figure suddenly rushed from behind Su Wan. And then Luo Yu's tall figure followed closely. When passing by Su Wan, Luo Yu couldn't help but stare at Su Wan. Su Wan, who did I provoke? Secretly curling her lips, Su Wan still couldn't help but look up at the direction of Jiang Yu's departure. It was this glance that immediately made Su Wan stunned. The afternoon sun was particularly bright. At this time, at the gate of Fenghing School, there were two tall figures standing side by side. These were two young people who looked only in their early 20s. Both of them were wearing cheap shirts and jeans, and the sneakers on their feet were also covered with dust. Such a dress looked like migrant workers who had just entered the city, with a dusty atmosphere, but these two young people were particularly handsome. The slightly taller young man had a cold face and calm eyes. Even if he was wearing such cheap clothes, it couldn't hide his innate sharpness. As for the other young man, he had a cute and handsome baby face. His clear eyes were blinking curiously. That adorable expression of his was enough to kill a lot of people. They didn't know when the two people came, but it was obvious that they had been watched for a long time, and they didn't seem to be aware of it. Most of the girls surrounding them were Fengheng's girls. Although these two handsome guys were dressed a little shabby, it didn't affect their beauty at all. There were also many beautiful girls with X-ray eyes who had read countless men, and they keenly observed the excellent figures under their thin shirts, 8 abdominal muscles, mermaid line and so on. So sexy and seductive. Xiao Qi. Xiao Yuni. Jiang Yu, who hurried to the door, suddenly shouted excitedly, and then she bent over, panting heavily, and looked at the two who were surrounded with a bright smile. Jiang Yu. The Xiao brothers at the door immediately looked in the direction of the sound, and both of their faces showed a very surprised look. Even Xiao Qi couldn't wait to rush in the direction of Jiang Yu. Xiao Yuni, who was behind him, was stunned for a moment, and quickly followed his elder brother. Jiang Yu stood in the same place and looked at her childhood sweetheart whom she hadn't seen for many days. She had known them for almost 10 years. Needless to say, the feelings of the three people were naturally deep, but it was really the first time that Jiang Yu saw Xiao Qi's always calm face showing such an impatient look. Big brother Xiao is really, Jiang Yu smiled helplessly. Seeing that Xiao Qi's slender figure was already in front of her, she opened her mouth and was about to speak, but the oncoming man passed her without stopping and went straight behind her. Jiang Yu was stunned in place, and Xiao Yuni, who followed his elder brother's footsteps, was also stunned. Big brother, is he okay? Although he has been weird during this time, he wouldn't really not know Jiang Yu, right? Just when Xiao Yuni hesitated to call his elder brother back, he heard all the surrounding onlookers making a high decibel scream. At this time, Xiao Qi had stopped in front of Su Wan. Without giving her any chance to speak, he had leaned down and kissed Su Wan's lips. His arms were very powerful, and he seemed to want to rub Su Wan into his body. At this time, Su Wan was held in someone's arms, and she was out of breath after being kissed. There were more and more people around, and even some people began to take out their mobile phones to record videos. Xiao Yuni was completely dumbfounded. With a pair of big eyes, he looked incredulously at the two people who were hugging and kissing in front of him. At this time, there was only one thought in his mind: bad, is Big Brother really crazy? How can he hug a person and kiss her? Will he be arrested by the police if he does this? Just when Xiao Yuni was worried, those who recognized Su Wan around him were even more noisy. The perverted young man kissed the fair, rich and beautiful campus belle. Is this a counterattack? General Su, you are perverted, your whole family is perverted. At this time, Su Wan had been kissed until her face was red, and she was out of breath. Seeing that she was struggling, the person in front of her finally let go of her reluctantly. Su Wan. At the moment when Xiao Qi released Su Wan, Jiang Yu immediately rushed to Su Wan, raised her hand and grabbed Su Wan's wrist. Xiao Wan, he is my friend, he He didn't mean it, don't hit him. Su-won, stunned for a moment, Su-won looked at the excited Jiang Yu in front of her with a strange look. Did I say I wanted to hit him? And what do you mean by it wasn't intentional? He kissed me in front of so many people, this is my first kiss. Hearing Su-won's words, there was a big uproar around, and even some people secretly turned their heads to look at Luo Yu, who was also standing in the crowd with a cold face. Oh, I seem to know something accidentally. For example, the first kiss or something. Jiang Yu hesitated when she heard Su-won's words. She didn't know how to solve the situation in front of her. God knows what kind of madness Xiao Qi had, how could he suddenly? Did he already know about the Su family, so he did this deliberately to help her embarrass Su-won? I'll be responsible. At this time, a certain man who had been silent finally spoke faintly. He ignored Jiang Yu's tangled face beside him, but stared at Su-won's face tenderly. I'll be responsible for you. Your mother. This scene is really one climax after another. Originally, a perverted handsome man kissing the female campus belle was explosive enough. As a result, this handsome man is actually a friend of the campus belle's rival. Of course, this is not over yet. Now this handsome man is even talking nonsense about being responsible for the campus belle. Buddy, I admit that you are handsome, but being handsome can't be eaten. Have you seen our campus belle Sue's ex? Yes, it's the tall, rich and handsome one in the crowd. You have to be at least half as rich and powerful as the top student Luo to dare to talk nonsense, right? While countless spectators were waiting for the handsome guy to be humiliated by the school belle, Su-won narrowed her eyes and chuckled at the man in front of her. Okay, since you want to take responsibility, from now on, you are my, Su-won's man. Onlookers, campus belle, this script is wrong. Bitter men, it turns out that this is the right way to pursue the campus belle. I really learned a lot today. General Su, what's with your expression of a flower inserted in cow dung? Yes, Xiao Qi is naturally Su-won. When he entered the mission, he bitterly found that he had become the childhood sweetheart of the female lead, and there was also a silly and cute drag bottle beside him. Xiao Yini was innocently shot. Chapter 134. Yi Jiangnan was a unique private home cuisine restaurant, located on the right side of Fengheng College. This restaurant was also a relatively famous brand of Su's restaurant chain. At noon, there were a lot of guests in the restaurant, and the Platinum VIP area on the third floor of the restaurant was much quieter than downstairs. Sitting in the luxurious and spacious private room, Xiao Yini was like a curious baby, blinking his big eyes and constantly looking at everything in the room. In contrast, the four people around him seemed very silent. Su-won and Su-rui sat together, while Jiang Yu sat on her right, and Luo Yu, who had a cold face, was on the other side of Jiang Yu. Su-won was also speechless about this pair of male and female leads. They went out to have a meal, and they also shamelessly want to be a high-degree light bulb. What's wrong with this? Isn't it good to play with your ambiguity at school? Miss Su. The manager of the restaurant was a middle-aged fat man. When he learned that Su-won and Jiang Yu came with their friends, he immediately came to entertain them in person. As an employee of Su's, the manager was naturally fortunate to attend the banquet held by the Su family to welcome Jiang Yu. At the banquet, Su Haiqing admitted that Jiang Yu was his and Wen Shu's biological daughter. Of course, in order to take care of Su-won's feelings, he did not tell Su-won's life experience, only saying that Jiang Yu was their eldest daughter who was lost many years ago. Some people didn't believe this statement at first. Everyone thought that this girl was probably Su Haiqing's illegitimate daughter outside, but when everyone saw Jiang Yu, who looked very similar to Wen Shu, everyone began to believe Su Haiqing's words. At this time, when everyone had just sat down, the restaurant manager rushed over for the first time. As soon as he entered the door, he greeted Jiang Yu and Su Wan enthusiastically. Seeing Luo Yu next to Jiang Yu, the manager's small eyes narrowed, and the smile on his face became more brilliant. It turns out that young Master Luo is also here. Today, our restaurant just has a batch of the freshest matsutake that has just arrived by air. Young Master Luo, would you like to try it? Luo Yu's family was very prominent, and the Su family usually had to look at their face, so the restaurant manager would flatter Luo Yu so much at this time. Cough. Su Wan coughed and closed the menu in her hand. Today is my treat, Manager Wang. Don't you see that my boyfriend is hungry? Manager Wang, isn't young Master Luo the boyfriend of Miss Su? Forgive me for not being informed. I still don't know that their Miss Su had been dumped by young Master Luo a few days ago. However, Manager Wang was a business elite after all. He turned his gaze and saw Su Rui next to Su Wan. Don't look at this young man's poor attire. His imposing manner was there. As long as one had some insight, they could see that he was definitely not an ordinary person. This young master must be the distinguished guest of Miss Su. I'm Wang Luo. Wang Luo quickly walked to Su Rui's side and smiled brightly at him. Her small eyes were about to narrow into a line. How should I address you, young master? Just order whatever you want. We have everything here. As the saying goes, one does not slap a smiling face. This Wang Luo was also a troublemaker, and no one could find any fault with him. Su Rui came with Xiao Yuni all the way, and he was really a little hungry now. Yuni, what do you want to eat? Turning his head to look at his younger brother who was a burden, Su Rui asked faintly. Xiao Yuni blinked his big eyes and looked at the dazzling array of dishes, but in his eyes, it was a completely unknown menu. He shook his head innocently. Big brother, I don't know. Forgive me for not entering such a high-end restaurant since I was a child. I don't know what to eat at all. Big brother, please help, then let me order for you. Su Rui also remembered at this moment that the identity of the Xiao brothers was estimated to have never entered such a high-end restaurant. He raised his hand and took the menu on the side and casually flipped through it. The dishes seemed to be good. He casually ordered 2 of Su Wan's favorites, and then thought of his brother's foodie nature. Su Rui couldn't help but order a few more plates. After ordering the dishes, Su Rui habitually turned his head and looked at Su Wan with a gentle face. What else do you want to eat? Do you want to drink? There are classes in the afternoon, we can't drink. Without waiting for Su Wan to answer, Jiang Yu on the side had already answered first. Su Rui's face sank. Talkative light bulbs and whatnot were the most annoying. Su Wan shrugged helplessly and gestured to Su Rui to be patient. Luo Yu, who had been coldly looking at Su Rui and Su Wan, looked at them without saying a word. Their every move as they sat there was completely unlike strangers they had just met. Somehow, the scene of Su Rui hugging and kissing Su Wan suddenly flashed in Luo Yu's mind. That scene made his heart inexplicably irritated. The original Su Wan was indeed very reserved and hypocritical. Her princess disease was very serious, but she could also be called a very elegant lady. In order to maintain her noble image as a school belle, Su Wan's behavior had always been very decent. Even when she was alone with Luo Yu, she would only pull his clothes and hold his fingers when she acted coquettishly at him. At that time, although Luo Yu was not very tired of Su Wan's temper, in fact, he still felt that she was too reserved and boring. Today, in front of his eyes, Su Wan and another man who came out of nowhere kissed in public. This scene was indeed somewhat beyond Luo Yu's expectations. Moreover, when he thought that Su Wan and this man were very likely to have known each other a long time ago, or even when she was in love with him, Luo Yu's face became even worse. Su Wan, it's not the first time you two have met, right? Restraining the coldness in his eyes, Luo Yu raised his chin slightly. Although he was asking Su Wan, his eyes calmly fell on Su Rui's face. Although Luo Yu did not show much, the deeply hidden hostility and sense of superiority were accurately captured by Su Rui. Su Rui glanced at Luo Yu faintly, then put his arm on Su Wan's shoulder and looked at Su Wan's side profile with a smile. Dear, who is he? An outsider. Su Wan replied casually, then raised her hand and took Su Rui's arm off her shoulder. Eat obediently. After eating, I will help you find a place to live. Luo Yu, as an outsider who has been completely ignored by Su Wan, he expressed that he was very unhappy now. Although Su Wan did not give Luo Yu an answer, Luo Yu already had the answer he wanted in his heart. No matter whether the two of them knew each other before or not, Su Wan's performance at the school gate today and her current posture were obviously done for him to see. Is she planning to embarrass herself? At this time, Jiang Yu, who was sitting next to Luo Yu, had the same complicated mood as him. In Jiang Yu's memory, Shao Qi has always been a very considerate, calm and secure big brother. During the days when she lost her adoptive mother, it was also Shao Qi who kept comforting Jiang Yu to get out of the grief at that time, and now, the Shao Qi in front of her made Jiang Yu feel strange. The big brother who used to smile gently at her now looked at her indifferently as if he was looking at a stranger. In the end, what happened to him during the days when they were separated? Chapter 135. Although Su Wan has no pressure about skipping classes, there is a good student and a meddlesome female lead by her side. Seeing that Su Wan wanted to skip classes to accompany Su Rui and Xiao Yuni, Jiang Yu first tried her best to dissuade her. Finally, she simply stayed by Xiao Yuni's side and didn't leave. She couldn't persuade Su Wan to repent and be saved, so she wanted to try the law by herself. For such a kind and persistent female lead, Su Wan is also intoxicated. In the end, Su Wan could only helplessly go back to class. Su Rui sent Su Wan all the way to the school gate. Before parting, he suddenly thought of something. He narrowed his eyes and opened his palm towards Su Wan. Now that I'm yours to support, you should at least give me a tip, Sugar Lord. General Su, you are naughty again. Brother Xiao. Jiang Yu on the side widened her eyes and looked at Su Rui incredulously. Brother Xiao, are you short of money now? I still have some here. Jiang Yu began to rummage through her pockets. After a long time, she found 315 yuan. General Su, this is not enough to buy a tie for this general, okay? Seeing that Su Rui looked at her with a strange look, Jiang Yu subconsciously clenched the 100 yuan bill in her palm. Is it not enough? Is there something wrong with your family? I can go home and raise money. Oh. Hearing Jiang Yu's words, Su Rui's eyes flashed, and suddenly stretched out his big hand and pulled the more than 300 yuan in her palm. Listening to you, I remember that when Aunt Zhao was hospitalized and died, I lent you 30,000 yuan. You are now the eldest daughter of the Su family. You won't renege on your debt with a poor man like me, right? Hearing Su Rui mention the past, Jiang Yu's face immediately became pale. Brother Xiao, you don't misunderstand. I didn't mean to not pay back the money, Jiang Yu anxiously wanted to explain something, but was interrupted by Su Rui impatiently. This is the interest, you can give the rest of the money directly to Su Wan. Su Rui didn't look at the banknotes in his hand and threw them to Xiao Yuni behind him. Take it, keep it to buy apples. Xiao Yuni, big brother, can I say that I hate eating apples? Even if Xiao Yuni is slow, he has long noticed the change in his elder brother's attitude towards Jiang Yu. At first, Xiao Yuni thought it was his own illusion. Now it seems that elder brother really hates Jiang Yu. Why was that? Xiao Yuni silently took the money. Although there were 10,000 reasons in his heart, he didn't speak, just silently playing a foodie. I'm going in. Class is about to begin. At this time, Soo-won looked at her wristwatch and said while taking out the bank card she found when she went home in the morning from her school bag, I have given you all my belongings. The password is 66s. You take Uni to change his clothes first. After I finish school, we will go to see the house together. As she spoke, Soo-won was about to turn around and leave. In the end, the moment Soo-ruo took the bank card, he directly grabbed Soo-won's hand. His wrist slightly exerted force and Soo-won's entire body was brought into his embrace. He lightly kissed Soo-won's lips and the two people's foreheads touched each other. Soo-ruo then smiled at Soo-won with satisfaction, see you after school. Soo-won smiled and nodded. Then she left Soo-ruo's embrace and turned to walk towards the school. From beginning to end, Jeong-yu stood aside and looked at the two of them stupidly. If at this time, she still can't see that there is something fishy between the two people, then she is really a fool. Brother Xiao, you and Xiao-won, as you can see. Soo-ruo raised the bank card in his hand. Do you know what is love at first sight? Well, you should also go to class. By the way, don't forget to return the money to Soo-won. Soo-ruo patted Xiao Yuni's head with the bank card in his hand. Yuni. Let's go, brother will take you shopping, and your sister-in-law will pay the bill. Xiao Yuni, shopping is also excellent. It is said that there is a street of specialty snacks near the shopping center in D City. Seeing that the Xiao brothers turned and left without stopping, Jeong-yu forcefully pulled the corner of her school uniform, and her face was full of grievances. Brother Xiao seems to be in need of money. Did he deliberately draw a line with me because he knew that she had become a rich lady and misunderstood that she would turn her back on him when she became rich? At this time, the class preparation bell just rang. Jeong-yu, who came back to her senses, remembered that her first class in the afternoon was the class teacher's class. She took a deep breath, turned around and ran quickly in the direction of the teaching building. Because Jeong-yu's speed was too fast, when passing a flower bed corner, she almost collided with a figure in front of her. Fortunately, Jeong-yu's skills were good, and the flexibility of her body was particularly good. Before colliding with the other party, Jeong-yu supported the flower bed on one side with one hand, and with a side somersault, she had already turned over from the side of the person. Her beautiful feet landed on the ground. Jeong-yu took a deep breath and looked up apologetically. Classmate, I didn't. Teacher when? The man in front of her wore gold-rimmed glasses, a snow-white shirt, the shirt cuffs were neatly rolled up, and in his right hand was a neat lesson plan. The gentle and handsome man in front of her was Jeong-yu's class teacher, Wen Wenhao. Jeong-yu. Wen Wenhao looked at Jeong-yu and smiled gently. Good kung fu. Jeong-yu's face turned red, and she rubbed her hair awkwardly. Teacher Wen, I didn't mean it. I'm going to be late. I'll be scolded by the teacher if I'm late. Goodbye, Teacher Wen. Looking at Jeong-yu leaving in a panic, Wen Wenhao pushed the glasses on the bridge of his nose in amusement. It seems that the teacher she was talking about is him, right? Jeong-yu, this girl, is really muddle-headed. At 2:00 in the afternoon, most students of all grades of Fongheng College were still in class. At this time, a variety of anonymous posts suddenly appeared in the most popular BBS on campus. The titles of these posts were particularly eye-catching, and there was only one protagonist in all the posts, that is Soo-won, the school belle Soo-won and the mysterious man kissed on campus. Who did the school belle give her first kiss to? There was such a thing. A rich and beautiful woman spent a lot of money to support a handsome young man. On the 100 Ways to Kiss the School Belle, the original poster personally, there were no secrets in the school, and the campus forum was the breeding ground of countless gossip and scandals. There were pictures and the truth about Soo-won and Soo-ruo, and it quickly became the hottest topic on Fongheng College. Therefore, When Su Rui appeared outside the school wearing a newly bought suit after school in the evening, it was no surprise that he once again encountered a strong onlooker from all walks of life. Chapter 136. D City is a first-tier city. The total price of a house in the urban area is more than 1 million, and to rent a decent apartment near Fongheng, the monthly rent is at least 4,000 yuan. After school, Su Wan accompanied Su Rui to leave hand in hand under the strange gazes of a group of onlookers. This was the first time Su Wan felt that Su Rui's hand was particularly big. Well, who let the original owner in this world be a petite schoolgirl, and at the age of 17, it seems that she hasn't grown up yet. Now Su Wan's height can barely reach Su Rui's shoulder. The height difference is really suitable for falling in love. The original owner was very knowledgeable about the high-end apartment near Fongheng, because after Jiang Yu lived in the Su family, Su Wan had been planning to move out, but there was no practical action yet. Now that Su Rui is here, Su Wan doesn't have to hesitate anymore. She directly took Su Rui and Xiao Yuni to find a 2-bedroom apartment that she had already chosen, and then paid the rent for half a year. The apartment is well equipped and belongs to the type that can be moved in with a bag. Su Wan has never been picky about where to live, and Su Rui has also accompanied Su Wan to live in the apartment several times. This time, although there is a third will in the apartment, it is the one that Su Rui is most satisfied with. In the previous 2-bedroom apartment, the two people lived separately, but now? Of course, Xiao Yuni lived in one room, and he and Su Wan lived in the other. Because they had to welcome Su Rui, the 3 people went to Yi Jiangnan to have a big meal. After eating and drinking, they returned to the apartment. When Su Rui arrived, he only brought a simple salute. Fortunately, in the afternoon, he also bought several sets of clothes for himself and Xiao Yuni and 2 sets of brand new pajamas. However, Su Wan didn't prepare anything. In the evening, she planned to go back to the Su family to pack up first, and then officially move in the next day. But how could General Su let his wife leave? Xiao Wan, I miss you. As soon as they returned to the bedroom, Su Rui hugged Su Wan from behind, and his slender and powerful arms imprisoned her whole body in his broad embrace. Will you stay with me tonight? Oh. Su Wan leaned comfortably in Su Rui's arms. I'll stay with you for a while. There is no pajamas here. It's not convenient to stay here at night, right? If there were only 2 people, it would be fine, but there was still Xiao Yuni living in this house, because there was only 1 bathroom in the apartment. It was really inconvenient to go out at night. You can wear my new shirt. As Su Rui spoke, he skillfully turned his face to the side and kissed Su Wan's earlobe with his warm lips. He wouldn't admit that he deliberately bought a small men's shirt. Yes. The feeling of being electrocuted made Su Wan couldn't help but groan softly. Su Rui, who was behind her, took the opportunity to raise his hand and tear off Su Wan's school uniform. His right hand slowly moved up and landed on Su Wan's soft shoulder. Wife. In the next second, Su Rui's eyes suddenly turned cold. His cold eyes looked deeply at Su Wan's shoulder. There was a deep red finger mark on her fair shoulder. Although it was already very faint, Su Rui could still tell that it was a new injury today. And the person who did it was an ancient martial arts expert. Who is it? The air in the room seemed to be frozen by ice. Su Rui's fingers gently and tenderly brushed the mark on Su Wan's shoulder. At this moment, the tyranny in his eyes could no longer be controlled. It's okay, it doesn't hurt anymore. Su Wan felt the rising murderous aura on Su Rui's body. She immediately raised her arms gently and turned over to hug Su Rui. This little injury is nothing. I am not a porcelain that will break at a touch. Is it Su Yu? Su Rui quickly went through the mission plot in his heart. Because the original Su Wan was just a cannon fodder in Jiang Yu's life, the interpersonal relationships around Su Wan were still simple, and the only person with this ability around her was only Su Yu. Hearing Su Rui's question, Su Wan had to nod. It's him. He is very alert and has a little doubt about me, but it is nothing to worry about. It is indeed nothing to worry about. Su Rui lowered his eyes, and a bloodthirsty killing intent flashed through his eyes. All the dead people were nothing to worry about. Wife, you go take a shower first. With a plan in mind, Su Rui took Su Wan's hands off his waist, turned around and handed her the small white shirt he had just bought. I'll pack my things first. I'll take a shower after you're done. Su Wan looked at the shirt that Su Rui threw into her palm that was obviously a size too small. At this time, she did not have time to care about this little thing. Su Rui, what do you want to do? She was not a child, how could she be so easily fooled by him? Be good. Su Rui held Su Wan with one hand and pressed her face against his chest. What can I do? I'm really just packing things. If Su Yu was a thing, Su Wan's eyes narrowed. Okay, you. Hurry up. She wanted to tell him to be careful, but when the words came to her mouth, it became hurry up. Since he didn't want her to worry, she sometimes didn't have to expose everything. Su Rui, you have to be careful. Su Yu is not easy to deal with. Although she was confident in Su Rui's martial arts, Su Yu was also an S-class wanted criminal after all. He was not only proficient in ancient martial arts, but also good at all kinds of guns and poisons. The reason why Su Wan didn't want Su Rui and Su Yu to face each other was simply that she didn't want to see Su Rui have any accidents. Just like how Su Rui felt distressed when he saw her injured, she also didn't want Su Rui to be hurt in the slightest. However, Su Wan also knew that once Su Rui decided on something, he would never give up. All she could do was to make him feel at ease. If she couldn't be a help, then remember not to let herself become a burden. I'm going to take a shower. Su Wan tidied up her school uniform and tightened the clothes in her arms. Before leaving the bedroom, she suddenly turned back and rushed to Su Rui. She tiptoed, held his face, and kissed him fiercely. You are this young lady's man. Everything you have belongs to this young lady. Without my permission, you are not allowed to lose even a strand of hair. Su Rui, who was suddenly attacked by Su Wan, froze in place. Until Su Wan's back left, he smiled and raised his hand to rub his lips. This girl was really ruthless. That kiss just now was not so much a kiss as a bite. Gently putting down his fingers, the gentleness in Su Rui's eyes gradually faded. He turned to the bedside and picked up the mobile phone that Su Wan threw on the bedside. From the address book, he found Su Yu's phone number and sent him a message. Where are you? I have something very important to tell you. After the message was sent, the other side quickly replied with a message. The message was very simple, just an address. As the saying goes, a crafty rabbit has 3 burrows. Su Yu had a lot of residences in D City. Today, because he had a big operation during the day, he directly returned to a high-class apartment near the hospital that he temporarily rented after work. When he received the message from Su Wan, Su Yu had just come out of the bathroom and returned his address. Su Yu sat on the sofa in the living room and poured himself a red wine. He didn't know what Su Wan wanted to say to him, and he didn't need to guess anything. In his opinion, that girl was just a grasshopper jumping around but could be pinched to death by him at any time. Chapter 137. At 7:30 in the evening, it is the time when most families gather around the TV to watch prime time. Su Yu, who has changed into a casual home suit, also turned on the TV in boredom, but his eyes did not fall on the 50-inch LCD monitor in front of him. Su Yu's eyes wandered aimlessly in the room, and it was obvious that he had something on his mind now. The air conditioner has been turned on in the room, and the temperature is 28 degrees, which makes people feel comfortable. Suddenly, Siyu sat up from the sofa and looked sharply at the vertical air conditioner in the corner. The computer board of the air conditioner still shows 28 degrees, but just for a moment, he felt the coolness, from the outside, with the chill of the night wind. Suyu's hand subconsciously touched his cuff, and a cold scalpel drew a ghastly arc in his palm. This is the weapon that he never leaves his hand, and sometimes it makes him more at ease than gunfire. At this time, only the sound of a family ethics drama played by a TV station could be heard in the living room. The mother-in-law and her daughter-in-law and the drama were quarreling fiercely. Suyu left the living room quietly. He was like a wandering lonely soul, leaving no footsteps. Coming to his bedroom, across a door, Suyu could feel the surging killing intent from there. The other party obviously did not deliberately converge his breath, and even Suyu suspected that the coldness just now was a signal deliberately released by the other party to him. The comber is not good, and the comber is very strong. Suyu's eyes condensed, and he slammed open the door of his bedroom. At this moment, the scalpel in his hand had flown toward the bedroom window in a very strange arc. In the dark room, the cold light suddenly appeared. At this time, the bedroom window was open, and there was a cold wind coming in, blowing the curtains on the side. Just in the center of the open window, there was an elegant figure sitting, wearing a simple shirt and trousers. At this time, the night wind blew the hem of his shirt, and his soft chestnut short hair was slightly messy. Suyu's action was not slow. He locked the other party's breath outside the door. At the moment of opening the door, the scalpel had been thrown out accurately. At this moment, he actually saw the appearance of the other party. It was an elegant and handsome young man. In the darkness, his eyes flashed with a dark light. Facing the scalpel with endless killing intent, Su Rui just carelessly hooked his lips, and in the next breath, his figure had disappeared from the window. In this world, no one can be faster than Su Rui, even Su Yun's scalpel. At the moment when Su Rui disappeared, Su Yu's pupils shrank sharply. He had only seen such skills in one person, and that person was the king of the killer in the dark world. The duel between the killers is often rapid and cruel. At this time, Suyu had no time to be distracted. At the moment when Su Rui disappeared, Suyu quickly stood in the east corner of the bedroom. His fingers slammed on the wall, and a box immediately popped out of the wall. The box contained a modified Desert Eagle. Holding the pistol in his hand, Su Yun's lips curved and said in a deep voice, "Su Yun, I will. The sound of footsteps in the darkness was particularly abrupt. A figure slowly emerged from the darkness, like a god of death from hell, and at this moment, this person's face had a strange smile that made people tremble with fear. "So you still like to use guns?" Su Rui came to Suyu leisurely and didn't seem to mind that he was being pointed at by a pistol. "Did the organization send you?" Suyu looked at Su Rui, and his eyes became more and more cold and fierce. "Do you think I dare not shoot?" "You can try." Su Rui raised his eyebrows and raised his hand slightly, and the bullet slowly fell from his palms to the floor, making a crisp sound. "Oh." Suyu saw Su Rui's fearless appearance and couldn't help but sneer. "You are really powerful, but unfortunately, this is my home." During the conversation, Suyu suddenly threw away the pistol in his hand, revealing a miniature remote control in the palm of his hand. The red light on the remote control was flashing, which was particularly dazzling in the darkness. "I have installed remote-controlled bombs in the whole room. If you want to perish together, I welcome you at any time." Suyu raised his eyebrows at Su Rui, and his face was full of confidence. "Oh, there are bombs." Su Rui's eyes widened exaggeratedly, and then looked at Suyu with a smile. "I can find your gun. Are you sure the remote control in your hand is still working?" Suyu's face was ugly for the first time. His fingers hesitated slightly. It seemed that he wanted to press the remote control, but he was worried that the bombs would really explode. So everyone in the world actually cherishes their lives, and assassins are no exception. They can ruthlessly harvest the lives of others and treat all the weak as ants, but they cherish their own little life. Don't dare to press it. I'll help you. Su-Rue's eyes were cold, and the next moment he appeared in front of Su-Yu like a ghost, grabbed his hand and pressed the red button. Boom. The violent explosion accompanied by the skyrocketing fire engulfed the entire room in an instant. For the first time, Su-Yu's face showed a look of surprise. He watched Su-Rue pull himself before the fire spread to the windowsill, and jumped out from the 8th floor. The direction was not down, his goal turned out to be the rooftop. The fire and the violent explosion have alarmed the entire building and all the pedestrians on the nearby streets. Not long after, there was a continuous siren sound on the streets of the urban area. Why save me? At this time, Su-Yu stood in the middle of the rooftop and looked at the expressionless young man in front of him, and the expression on his face was somewhat complicated. Now he has to admit that there is always someone better than him. The young man in front of him is not at the same level as himself, and even the king of assassins he knew may not be his opponent. Who said I wanted to save you? Su-Rue looked at Su-Yu in front of him and couldn't help but sink his face. He blew up Su-Yu's home just for the convenience of dealing with the aftermath. Now Su-Yu is a dead man, and he was burned to death by the fire. You. Seeing Su-Rue's gloomy face approaching step by step, the more and more intense murderous aura made Su-Yu, who had killed many people, couldn't help but shudder. How many people did the person in front of him kill? Why is there such a heavy murderous aura? Of course, Su-Yu didn't know what kind of mountain of corpses and sea of blood Su-Rue came out from. At this moment, he felt powerless for the first time. The deep sense of powerlessness in the face of an invincible opponent. Now, let's end it all as soon as possible. Su-Rue stood in front of Su-Yu and smiled inexplicably. My wife is still waiting for me to take a bath at home. Su-Yu. When Su-Rue's voice fell, Su-Yu suddenly made a move. This blow exhausted his full strength at this time and went straight to the death point of Su-Rue's chest. At such a close distance, most people can't avoid it, and Su-Rue really didn't avoid it, but, crack, when Su-Yu was about to succeed, his arm was suddenly grabbed by Su-Rue. The next moment, Su-Yu only felt a heart-wrenching pain coming from his arm. His arm was actually broken by Su-Rue. Su-Yu's face darkened a little bit, and the eyes that were still determined to win could only be full of surprise at the moment to look at the person in front of him. You used this hand to hurt my wife. No, maybe it's that one. Su-Rue turned his wrist and broke Su-Yu's other arm in the same way. At this time, Su-Yu's arms were drooping, and it was obvious that he had lost most of his combat effectiveness. But how could Su-Rue let him go so easily? Boom! After lightly kicking Su-Yu, Su-Rue looked at him condescendingly, and his black leather shoes ran over each of Su-Yu's fingers. Do you think I should chop all your hands and feed them to the dog? Or stew your whole arm and feed it to the dog? Su-Yu, can you not be so cruel? Oh! Hearing the sound of the fire engine downstairs getting closer and closer, Su-Rue suddenly whispered in annoyance, I think I wasted a lot of time. If I go back late, my wife will be angry. Do you know how to coax her when she is angry? Speaking of this, Su-Rue suddenly bent down and stared strangely at Su-Yu, who had fallen to the ground and vomited blood. I'm going to write her a love letter, a blood letter. With that, Su-Rue's palm turned over, and a scalpel with a cold light had appeared in his palm. This is the weapon that Su-Yu has carried for many years. I'm going to bleed you dry and write a 1,000-word love letter. Then, I'm going to use this knife to cut off your flesh piece by piece, break your tendons, and pick off your bones. Then, I'm going to put them in a Ziploc and bring them to the alley to feed the wild dogs. Su, who can tell him where this madman came from? You, who the hell are you? At this time, Su-rui had begun to bleed Su-yu with a scalpel. Su-yu, who had done surgery and killed people all his life, felt the sadness and despair of those weak people facing death for the first time. Who are you? This may be the only thing he wants to know at this moment. Oh, hee. Su-rui just smiled and looked at the blood on the blade. His eyes were scarlet and scary. It doesn't matter who I am. What matters is you. You hurt the lover I care about most. Chapter 138. When Su-rui returned to the apartment from outside, he had changed his clothes from head to toe. Don't ask General Su how he did it, he wouldn't tell you even if you asked. Opening the bedroom door, not surprisingly, Su-won was sitting on the bed. She had changed into the white men's shirt. Seeing Su-rui come back, Su-won suddenly stood up. A pair of snow-white straight legs almost dazzled Su-rui's eyes. You're back. Su-won's eyes looked up and down at Su-rui. Seeing that his complexion was very good and his body didn't seem to be injured, Su-won heaved a sigh of relief in her heart. Waiting for me. At this time, Su-rui had already restrained his murderous aura. In front of Su-won, he was always the man who would only smile gently at her. Slowly walking to Su-won, Su-rui raised his hand and rubbed Su-won's long hair. Why didn't you take a bath? Her hair was dry and didn't look like she had just washed it not long ago. Hearing Su-rui's words, Su-won lowered her eyes and her tone was a little weak. If you don't come back, who will help me take a bath? You are, but you are being covered by this lady, woo. Su-rui's kiss blocked Su-won's words. He kissed her hard and carried Su-won's whole body with both hands at the same time, turning to leave the bedroom and walking towards the bathroom. In the bathroom, warm water constantly flowed out of the shower. Su-rui held the shampoo in one hand and gently rubbed Su-won's long hair with the other. The plentiful foam flowed along her waterfall-like black hair and onto her back, leaving white traces on Su-won's fair and smooth back. It looked especially seductive. Wife, you're so beautiful. Su-rui couldn't help but kiss Su-won's hair. Su-won's cheeks, which were flushed by the water vapor, couldn't help but become redder. Su-rui, do you want it? Although she didn't ask about Su-yu's ending, Su-won felt that Su-yu had completely disappeared from this world now since Su-rui made a move. Even if Su-rui tried his best to restrain himself, he, who had just killed someone, would inevitably be stained with a trace of blood. Su-won remembered that there was a saying, unable to repay, I can only repay with my body. She had always used all her strength to love Su-rui, but most of the time, she felt that she didn't give enough because Su-rui never needed her to do anything for him. He didn't need anything else. He just needed her to love him well and that would be enough. Facing this kind of lover, Su-won felt that she really had reached the point where she couldn't repay him. Wife. Su-rui helped Su-won wash her hair and tightly hugged her under the shower. Men are animals that can't control their lower bodies, especially in front of their most beloved woman, but let's sleep after you're done. Su-rui whispered in Su-won's ear. Many men liked youthful and even immature bodies, but Su-rui knew his own situation. As long as that person was Su-won, he wouldn't be able to control his strength and would easily hurt her. And this body in this world clearly couldn't withstand his brutal torment. Therefore, in this world, General Su was determined to be an ascetic. General Su didn't think that it would be too late to eat a good meal. He would wait for the next world to find it and whatnot. After taking a bath, Su-rui helped Su-won dry her hair. The two people lay on the bed and hugged each other tightly to sleep. On the first night in this world, they all slept very sweetly and steadily. the next day happened to be the weekend. Su Wan originally wanted to go to bed with Su Rui and sleep in bed. As a result, early in the morning, there was a weak knock from Xiao Yuni outside the bedroom door. Eldest brother. Big, sister-in-law. Are you up? Xiao Yuni was not used to the strange title of sister-in-law, but he did not reject Su Wan at all. The person who could invite him to a big meal must not be a bad person. Yes, that's the case. Xiao Yuni. Do you want to die? Su Rui's murderous roar came from the room. Xiao Yuni outside the door subconsciously shrank his shoulders, blinked his big eyes and looked at the people around him pitifully. Jiang Yu, look, brother Xiao, Xiao Wan, it's me. Jiang Yu cleared her throat and shouted at the door. Last night, Su Wan didn't return all night, which naturally made Su Haiqing very dissatisfied, and Jiang Yu was afraid that Su Haiqing would vent his anger on the Xiao brothers who were with Su Wan, so she took the initiative to confess about Su Wan and Xiao Qi's relationship. Su Haiqing, who learned of this, was naturally furious. For Su Wan and a man she just met and didn't know the details, and even went out to rent a house together, in Su Haiqing's view, this is absolutely not self-respect. It's self-abandonment. She is deliberately indulging herself. Su Haiqing, who was furious, immediately used his connections to find out the address of Su Wan's rented house. Originally, he was going to bring people here last night, but Su Yu's apartment suddenly exploded. Because Su Yu's parents died early, his only relative in D City was Su Haiqing. After such a big thing happened, Su Haiqing could only put Su Wan's affairs aside for the time being. Su Haiqing didn't return all night because he was dealing with Su Yu's affairs. Taking advantage of today's holiday, Jiang Yu took the money from Wen Shu and went straight here. The person in the bedroom was silent for a long time after hearing Jiang Yu's voice. When Jiang Yu waited outside the door for a long time and couldn't help but want to speak again, the bedroom door was finally opened from the inside. What's the matter? Su Rui was wearing pajamas and looked at Jiang Yu outside the door with an unkind face. Jiang Yu looked at Su Rui's pajamas and glanced at the messy big bed in the room. Brother Xiao, you and Xiao Wan, together. If he doesn't sleep with me, does he sleep with you? Su Wan, who had just changed her clothes, walked out from behind Su Rui, holding Su Rui's arm while looking at Jiang Yu with a mocking face. Hearing Su Wan's words, Jiang Yu's face immediately became very embarrassed. Xiao Wan, I am your sister, how can you say that? Obviously, our pure and clean female lead Darren couldn't accept Su Wan's blatant ridicule. In this regard, Su Wan can only chuckle. Able to play ambiguously with a large group of men, and finally able to play with the NPC Mary Su female lead Darren, you are really pure to the point of breaking through the sky. Sister. I don't have a sister. Su Wan couldn't help but coldly say to Jiang Yu, how did you find this place? Did you tell my dad about me and Xiao Qi? With Jiang Yu's brain, she absolutely can't find Su Wan's current address. In the Su family, only Su Haiqing can do this. Hearing Su Wan mention Su Haiqing, Jiang Yu suddenly remembered the purpose of her trip. Xiao Wan, brother Xiao, my dad already knows about you. He can't get away from something now. When he comes back, he will definitely come to trouble you. With that said, Jiang Yu hurriedly took out a bank card from her bag. Brother Xiao, there is 100,000 yuan here. If it is not enough, I will remit it to you later. If you have something to do at home, go back first. Don't stay here any longer, it will be dangerous. Oh. Hearing Jiang Yu's words, Su Rui couldn't help but raise his eyebrows and clamped the bank card into his hand with 2 fingers. Uncle Su knows about me and Xiao Wan. Jiang Yu, you told him, right? Why are you pretending to be a good person here now? No, I'm not. I'm just afraid that Dad will hurt you. I didn't mean it. Hearing Su Rui's cold words, Jiang Yu, who felt that she was once again misunderstood by Brother Xiao, desperately wanted to explain, but the more anxious she was, the more speechless she became. Jiang Yu, you didn't do anything on purpose. You are always innocent. It's not you who is wrong, it's the whole world. Is this okay? Su Wan really didn't want to continue to waste her time with the female lead Darren. She couldn't help but step forward and push away Jiang Yu, who was blocking the door, and then proudly strode towards the living room. I'm hungry, Xiao Qi, you go cook. Got it. As soon as Su Rui heard his wife's order, he immediately put away his cold face and strode towards the kitchen with a smile. He wants to thank Xiao Yuni, thank the dead Father Xiao. If it weren't for Father Xiao who killed his wife and tormented himself to death, the Xiao brothers would not have become orphans. Xiao Qi, who became an orphan, had to carry a burden, Xiao Yuni, with him all the time, and this burden was also a foodie. Therefore, thanks to the blessing of Zhao's father and Xiao Yuni, Xiao Qi began to earn his own living since he was a child, and he also practiced very good cooking skills.